Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of For the Roll, a podcast where we talk about everything Warhammer. Again, I'm joined by Dan.
Hey.
And we're going to talk about the new June 2025 Balance Dataslate. Dan, what are your thoughts on it so far?
Well, we're recording this day of.
We are.
And we don't get any early access, obviously, to Dataslate.
Unfortunately
so
not.
Got a message, woke up this morning to a message from one of my friends in the group chat going, Dataslate's live. So having a look at it, it's a bit of a fire sale. There's been a lot of changes. Yeah. Nothing huge. That's not nothing huge, that's a lie. A few massive changes, but predominantly a lot of small tweaks that have got big ramifications potentially for different armies.
Does seem like it. So the fire sale is the exact word I was going to use as well. So yeah, woke up this morning to the text message and it was just like, okay, let's go. So that's why we're recording today. So if there is any slight inconsistencies, do bear with us.
Yeah, I mean, we've tried to kind of have as much prep as we can in a couple of hours we've had since, but we'll certainly miss something.
I'm sure there will be. So let us know if we do in the comments below, because as I say, it's a community-based scenario. So let's just work together and see what we can get as to the best ideas and the outcomes from this data slate. But Dan, why don't you start us off?
Well, we'll start down. We're going to go down the list in alphabetical order.
Yep.
So we'll start with a nice big change. Sisters of Battle, or Adaptor Sororitas. So they only look as if on their data sheet they've got 3 changes primarily. However, these are big changes, and there's a lot of points changes that have come with them. So currently the army is very much underperforming. When it released as a codex, it was incredibly powerful, really potent codex, and then was hit by a repeated bashing of nerfs.
Yeah.
A couple of compensatory changes, but outside of one pretty specific list, it's not had much success at all.
Yeah.
The biggest failure is probably it's only got one detachment that's playable at the moment, Hallowed Martyrs.
Okay.
The others are very kind of outside of the scope at the moment. So the first change is fitting with that. It's their Grotmus detachment. So their Grotmus detachment had the unfortunate issue of it hit just before the nerfs. So just after their nerfs, but it was clearly designed beforehand. So it has a lot of spending of miracle dice when their miracle dice production went down a lot.
Right, gotcha.
Now, they have had a little bit of a rebalance getting a few of it back, but it's still not what it was codex launch.
Okay.
So the change is, the current detachment is Champions of Faith, the Grotmus one.
Yep.
And now it reads, in your command phase, you can select up to 3 Adopter Sororitas units from your army, including units that are embarked within transports.
Okay.
And until the start of your next command phase, those units are righteous. Now, before, you'd have to spend a faith dice for every unit you picked to make righteous. The buff, I've got to get up in front of me what the exact buff was. Bear with me 2 seconds. I know it triggered off your stratagems. That was the main setup for it. So there's a lot of stratagem. Noish, I believe it was primarily Sacrosants that got buffed off the change. If you just bear with me a few seconds. All right, so after managing to find it, so as I said, you have to discard 3 miracle dice. So when your unit is righteous, they get +1 movement, +1 leadership, and then they get a weapon skill and ballistic skill increased if they are a Battle Sisters squad, Celestian Sacrosant, and Paragon Warsuit. Specifically, it's just the models in those units, so no characters. Okay. So the main use of this was on the Sacrosants. They're the main units, the benefits, and the Paragon Warsuits, obviously. Then with Morven Vow is one of the keys to a Sisters army at the moment.
Yep.
So not have to spend miracle dice to get this benefit makes this a much more appealing side option. The stratagems are already nice. The issue was before, compared to Hallowed Martyrs, it just wasn't worth sacrificing your miracle dice for this effect. So this gives them a bit more play in that respect, especially because a few of those key units that for the detachments points went down in the data slate.
They did, yeah.
So we'll get to those in a second. I'll just go through the rest of the changes. So Zephyrim, a unit I love, the melee Seraphim. So as opposed to having their pistols, they've got the power swords. They again toned down on how many miracle dice they need to use. Okay. So in the fight phase, they get to choose to get sustained hits or lethal ones. Previously, if they made a charge, they could spend a miracle dice to get both. Now they just get both when they make a charge.
Okay.
No miracle dice sacrifice. Another thing that a lot of Sisters players have been asking for, so I'm really happy for them, is it doesn't just affect power weapons in the squad. It affects all melee weapons, which means any attached characters, so a jump pack Canoness, because they got given this new model in this edition, the jump pack Canoness, the unit that she could primarily want to join, she didn't get buffed by. So
right, okay.
you can make a Smash Captain.
Okay.
And you can buff Celestine in the unit as well.
Oh,
so
okay.
giving her a lot sustained hits and lethals on already. Yeah, exactly. It makes her hit hard. So it's much more close to how Space Marine characters operate now, which is very nice for them. The other change is a unit that desperately needed a buff as well. The Retributors, their Devastator equivalent.
Yep.
So they got buffed to add re-rolls of hit rolls of 1, as well as wound rolls of 1. And then they also had, if they target a unit that's already killed an enemy, killed one of your units, you used to get re-roll wound rolls. Now you get +1 to hit, +1 to wound.
Okay.
The worst thing about this unit was getting out of a vehicle, because you have to get them out of a vehicle to use them, because they're so expensive and so squishy. And then you roll your 8 multi-motor shots and get unlucky and get 2 hits. This mitigates that a lot. If you can either, even just the reroll hit rolls of 1, it's a 16% damage increase. With the +1 to hit, it's like a 50% hit increase. It means, you're going from 3s with no rerolls to 2s rolling 1s.
Jesus, yeah.
So it's a huge increase. Whether this will make them viable, I don't know. You want to compare them to Fire Dragons, which copped another nerf in this data slate, and they've been since they've been out, they've been one of the more dominant anti-tank units.
They have, yeah.
A big reason for that though is battle focus letting them not be overwatched.
Yes.
Sisters don't have access to that. So you are still hopping out of a vehicle with a unit that has no ablative wounds, that are 25 points of muzzle, that you've got 1 ablative wound in the leader. As soon as the others die, you're losing a multi-melter. Their toughness 3-1 wounds. They're going to lose models, just bolt or Overwatch even. So you've got to be really careful with how you use them. If you've got the trading pieces to use them correctly, they can actually work now, which is nice. They're worth trying to make work, is probably the best way to say it.
Gotcha, okay.
And just go through the points changes quickly as well, because there've been quite a few.
There's a fair few, and they're all positive in terms of point reductions. So the first one we have is the Castigator going down to 160 points, so down 10 points, which is nice.
So the Castigator, if those don't know, is their Predator equivalent they've got.
That's right.
And as you well know, I love my Predators.
You definitely do.
And these are better than Predators a lot of the times. They have the the Lehman Russ like Exterminator rule, where when they target an enemy unit, the rest of your army gets +1 AP against it.
There you go. Yeah.
And they've got, as opposed to having like weird sponsor weapons, they've just got 3 heavy bolters and their autocannon on top.
Nice.
You can take a battle cannon on them. I prefer the autocannon typically. It's twin linked. It's just so deadly for what it can do. And how many points is it now?
It's 160 now.
Yeah, I mean, that's a beautiful model. I mean, it's still, 20, 25 points more than most Predator Destructors.
Yeah, exactly.
But with that ability and in this army, it's
stacked really well.
Really nice. It's potentially pushed even too far now with the other buffs. It's going to be a mainstay of most Sisters armies again.
I can imagine it will be, yeah. The next one you have is the Immolator, which is, again, reduced by 10 points to 115.
Yeah, again, paired with the Retributor buff, really nice. It means, one of your best transport options getting buffed. It's only a good thing. This isn't a unit that was seeing huge amounts of play. Something that is interesting, technically, if it stays the same in the Knight Codex, this is a buff to Knights as well.
Yep.
But no, that's a lie. The Imperial Agent one has a different points cost. Ignore me.
Oh, well, there you go.
Different points cost. But this is still very nice for Sisters regardless.
No, exactly. And then we've got Junior Theruta, which is going, again, from down 10 points from 90 to 80.
So this is a perfect example of the new GW balancing, where they're, for the most part, I have a few issues with this data slate, but for the most part, they intelligently buff. This is a unit that was seen play in nearly every Sisters army.
Well, okay.
So going down 10 points is at 10 points Sisters are gaining. It's not buffing a completely rubbish unit by 10 points. This will actually affect their competitive. That is a 10-point reduction for nearly every Sisters list.
Oh, well, there you go then. That gives them something in that respect. The next one you've got is the Paragon Warsuits. The 3-model unit is going from 220 to 210. So again, another 10-point reduction.
Yeah, and did Morven Val get any points changes at all? I can't remember.
In terms of Morven Val, let's have a little look-see. Not as far as I can see. No. So in that, there's no point reduction on that one.
I still don't think you're going to take Paragon Warsuits without Morven Val. I still think at 70 points a model, they're a bit pricey, but you take one squad of those with Morven Val is a must-take in every Sisters list.
It makes sense. No. Then they've got the Repentia squads. You've got both the 5-man and the 10-man squads.
So this is weird. We spoke about this before we started. So that actually hasn't changed. Although it says -10, -10, the points are still the same. The only difference is the 5-man only went down 5 points in the previous data slate. So whether it's supposed to say 5 there, or and then they're the same, or whether it's supposed to say 10 and they're supposed to be 80 points for 5 now, we don't know.
No, and that's something we're going to have to wait.
If they are 80 points for 5, they might start seeing play again.
Yeah.
So
we'd have to wait until we get sort of confirmation from GW in that one. Then you've got the Retributor squad, again, 5 models. You've got a drop in 10 points. It's 115.
Yeah, so again, as I was saying earlier, you're pointing them sort of 25 points a model. Now they're much cheaper than that.
Yeah.
We're talking about 23 points a model now, which is just...
speaking.
Are they going to be a huge meta-dominant threat? I'd be very surprised. I don't think they have great matchups. There's a lot of deadly Overwatch just casually strapped onto units now. I mean, Death Guard 1,000 Suns is going to be quite prevalent, both of which have access to casual torrents slapped on units.
Yeah.
Getting those out is going to be really tricky. But if Sisters players can get them work, you get a payoff now.
Yeah, exactly. And then you've got the Seraphim squads, the 5-man, the 10-mans drop 5 and 10 respectively.
Nice, nice 1-point change. It's not going to drastically change this. But if you're already taking Seraphim, you're happy about it.
Yeah. No, exactly. And the Triumph of St. Catherine, the big The big.
One of my favourite models in 40k.
Again, dropped 15 points to 235.
Yes, I mean, it's slow, and it's nowhere near what it was when the Codex dropped, because it was probably the most insanely pointed model ever.
Stupid, yes.
But we're slowly getting back, because it was too expensive at this point. So toning it down a bit is nice.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. But that's kind of the point changes. There isn't really anything else when it comes to Sisters.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably one of the biggest winners out of the data slate.
Yeah.
A couple of their really bad matchups, they got nerfed quite heavily, as we'll get to later, and they themselves only got buffed.
Yep.
No negative changes. I think the mission rules benefit them as well. Sisters like a trading game. Their points went down for trading, and some of the new primaries and secondaries really incentivize heavy aggressive trading armies. That if you're a Sisters player, you should be very happy about this data slate.
No, I can imagine.
Big wewinners.
No, good. Moving on, we've got the Adeptus Custodes.
Very minor change.
Yeah, very minor. The biggest thing really was just the Aloris Custodians.
It's the only thing really, besides other armies being changed. I think it's just finally been put into perspective with the use of Death Shroud.
Yeah.
How overcosted Aloris were. So this is nice. I mean, a few armies are experimenting with the middle-sized units, like 4-mans, and 2-mans have been a mainstay of Custodes in competitive play for a while, so it's going to be nice. A lot of lists, it's going to just maybe let you add a third enhancement.
Yeah.
For Aunt Mate Nick, who's been trying out 18 Aloris, he'll certainly be happy about this change. Basically, it's either 2 Sisters squads or potentially 2 more Custodes into his like Wardens or Guard blocks.
Yeah, exactly. But across the board, we've had a reduction on the 2, the 3, the 5, and the 6-man squads.
Yeah, I mean, some people might be a bit confused why Custodes are getting buffs, as they are like a relatively good win rate faction. They're going 4-1 in a lot of events. They're struggling to close out tournaments at the moment. They're struggling to get that 5-0 over the board. Just at the top tables, they are struggling a little bit. So a little tweak. This isn't buffing any of their most meta units at all.
Not really, no.
Just a nice little tweak again. Maybe a third enhancement, or potentially opening up a Spamaloris list of competitive play. People have been trying it. We've yet to see it kind of break into much meta success, but with a few changes, it certainly might be up there as Death Shroud equivalents.
Exactly. It only really impacts, on a major scale, the new detached lines of the Emperor.
100%. If you really want to go all in on splitting them up to sort of, unleash the lions, this is a huge change.
Yeah, as I say, it makes a big impact from the amount of points.
5 points a model, it's everyone you run. If you're running for the 6, you're basically getting Squad of Sisters near enough at that point. If you're running the stupid amount of 18, you're getting nearly 100 points off your list.
Yeah.
No one's going to complain about that.
No, exactly. So, apart from that, though, no real changes.
Yeah, no, again, I think the status, we're not going to say they're significant winners. I think they're pretty unchanged. I think they maybe were a tiny bit preferred to the old rules, just because they did have very good battle line if you were running a guard-heavy list. So maybe, and they match up into Death Guard, because all melee armies struggling to Death Guard isn't fantastic. However, out of all melee armies, they're probably one of the most resilient against Death Guard. So yeah, they stayed pretty much the same. If you're a Custodes player, it's not going to open up anything new to you unless you desperately wanted to put a load of Aloris on the table.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Moving on. Adeptus Mechanicus.
So we'll start this off by going, we're both, as like most people in the 40k community, not experts in Adeptus Mechanicus. Fortunately, one of my best mates is an Admech player, and I've been to a doubles event with him fairly recently, so I got a pretty big crash course in the army. So these changes are great primarily for anyone who loves robots.
Okay.
If you like the Rock'em Sock'em Rock'em Robots from Riser, last edition or 8th edition, they're not back, but they're certainly more viable.
Right, okay.
So at the start of the Codex, the issue is the designers of the Admech Codex clearly hadn't got the memo about the edition being simpler.
Okay.
So although it's a lot simpler than 9th edition, it's no hour-long command phases, everything was very limited. Each detachment only allowed certain units to work. The army rule was really restrictive.
Yeah.
As the edition's gone on and on and on, they've lifted more and more of these restrictions.
Okay.
This is kind of the final one that was left. So now the Cybernetic Datasmith and Castellan robots have data imperative, I think it's called, just to check out the right name. Yeah, always. They don't need to have it in the specific detachment now.
Okay.
So now in that detachment, they get +1 OC and +2 movement.
Okay.
So nice change there. If you're not getting punished for playing the robot detachment now, they get an actual buff. And if you do want to run them in other detachments, you can. They're going to get the army rule, whereas before they wouldn't get the army rule, which never feels good. I think it's a good change overall. Doctrina Imperatives is the faction rule. I finally found it. There we go. The other big change was for the Halos Creed Battle Clade, which is a really nice detachment. It's their Grotmus one. It's hotly debated whether it's better than Hunter Cohort. I certainly prefer it. I'm not a competitive Admech player, I can't say, but I do. It just gives you more options. It's not just spam Skitarii.
Gotcha.
You've got other things that are viable. All this does is it lets you get the Halo override keyword onto your Castellan robots.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's nice. They also got some points tweaks.
Okay. Yeah.
So the big one is any fans of chickens. I believe that besides the absolute rubbish chickens, the sniper chickens, I don't know their proper names. I do apologise.
The Iron Strider.
So the Iron Strider's Balastari is the last cannon one. That's probably the best chicken.
Yep.
I call them chickens. If you've nearly always heard this, if you haven't, Google the models.
Yeah.
They literally are like bipedals that run like this. They are chicken walkers. It's the best way to call them.
The best description I've ever heard.
So perhaps nightmare fuel for people who did. If anyone ever faced Index AdMech, they'll be quite scared by both these units going down. Because what are they now? Iron Strider, Balastari?
So you've got the one model is down by 5 points to 70. The two models, two-man unit, is down by 10 points, and the three-man is down by 15. So you got the 5 points.
So they've gone up to 70 points a model now.
Yeah.
Spamming chickens is a terrifying thing to play against. Just a wall of really annoying to kill walkers. I think it really went under the radar how obnoxious this list could be for two reasons. One, no one played AdMech, and no one still plays AdMech really. And two, no one has the money to play that list. At the time, the theory was that if you could run 27 chickens, it was a really competitive list. No one owned 27 chickens to play. Like, our friend has been collecting them since they came out, and I think he got to he's now at 16, I think, or about like 14, 16, and he bought 2 more for our doubles event because we ran 8 in total.
Okay.
In 1,000 points, he ran 8.
Right.
So he'll be very happy about these changes. I think it was a similar points streak for the Dragoons as well, was it?
Yes. So we've got the Dragoons, you've got with the Taser Lances, you've got the 5-point reduction for 1, 10 point, and then 3 point. Again,
so 5 points each again. And they're how many points each now?
So you've got the 65, the 130, and the 195.
Now. So just to stay in line, they are slightly weaker because they've got to get into melee. They're not a las cannon. But again, 65 points for that body.
Yeah.
It just means if you were running 9 of those before, you've saved 45 points. You can get something else in. Potentially what you can get is the other big AdMech change, the new servitor unit.
Yes.
So this was a really big surprise that we got these in the current data slate. These are from the new Kill Team box that's been shown. I don't know if you've not seen it. It's Raveners versus Servitors.
Yep.
Both really cool units, really popular, and both Servitors don't exist in AdMech at the moment, weirdly enough, so they needed it, and Raveners desperately needed a miniature overhaul.
Oh, they did.
So we'll get to those in the mid-section you'll be covering later.
Yep.
But the Servitor unit, I'm not going to lie to you, it's not going to rip up brutes. It's not particularly exciting. However, it is another action monkey. Yes. Now, AdMech players definitely don't need action monkeys in their army, but having one that is more efficient and better at it is certainly there. It's going to come down to whether you care about OC or their ability. So these are only OC1, they're not battle line, but their ability is while they have a tech priest, which is just their servitor, their leader is a tech priest.
Sure.
They can shoot and do actions and can advance and do actions.
Very powerful.
Very powerful. So these used to be mission rules of battle line. So having that just always on is a very powerful rule.
Yeah.
Especially for an army that can sometimes struggle with actions despite having a lot of units. If you're running a lot of the Cav or Rust Stalkers, you're not going to be too interested in this unit, I imagine. So like Skitari Hunter Clade probably isn't massively happy about services. I could be wrong. Again, I'm not an expert on AdMech by any means. I think Halo's Creed are the real winners out of this unit.
Yeah.
Because you're not spamming just tons of Skitari everywhere. You do have you're playing for, usually 3 Scorpius Disintegrators in the meta list at the moment, which again, I think they went down in points actually.
They did, yes. So they dropped by 10 points.
Yeah. So
165.
A lot of meta lists were running 3 of them. So that's just 30 points. So if you're running those, you weren't usually going super hard on chickens. So both those sort of styles are getting a few points back, which is nice. Probably enough to squeeze one of these battle clades in, which is just they're a 9 model unit for 60 points.
Oh, okay.
So with someone who's better at maths can do that quicker than me. Wow.
It'll be on the screen.
Yeah, 6.5 points a model, I think. Yeah, roughly. So 6.5 points a model for 4+ save. They've only got a 6+ invuln, weirdly. The reason that's weird is because nearly all AdMech have a 5+ invuln because they're bionics. I guess because they're servitors, it's fine.
Yeah.
But for that many models, the leader's 2 wounds, so it might be a little bit obnoxious. Right. And an important thing is, if it's just the leader alive, it still contains 1 or more tech priests, so he can still advance and do an action.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. The shooting and doing actions, okay. I mean, they've got a heavy bolter, an arc rifle, and you're either going to have you're probably going to have 3 hand flamers in there. That's probably the better upgrade. Just looking quickly over the unit data slate, but it's still, you get some shots. Yeah, which is, you can't complain at.
But it's more the advance.
The advance. So the 6-inch move, being able to advance, you're averaging sort of 10 inches. Yeah. When you're adding in Halo's Creed, they can get an extra 2 inches on their move. I believe they've got something with advance that might be the Skitari attachment, actually, so they won't get access to this. regardless, there's ability to manipulate their movement. It's the cheapest unit you can bring.
Yeah.
And I mean, besides the really bad chicken, this doesn't give away Bring It Down.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So if you wanted a unit, want to be able to go through walls, be a bit more annoying, you don't have to care too much about the different stats surviving into your opponent's next turn actions anymore in this pack. But Sabotage still exists. This is probably the best unit for doing Sabotage in the army now.
Yeah.
So it's a nice change very much. And also, the models are really cool.
Yeah.
So if you're excited for the kill team in that respect, yeah, you're happy with their rules. I think the exact words our met friend put were, looks like I need to buy 3 of them.
Yeah.
So
Makes a lot of sense. So moving on. What do we have next?
so I've been quite positive so far. That's probably going to end now. For a time being. We're on to the Eldar.
Okay.
So the first change in the Eldar is absolutely fine and needed to happen. So the Inari detachment got nerfed. It was their lethal intent ability. So this ability was absolutely obscene. This is where all of the power budget of Inari went near enough. So it reads now, at the end of your opponent's shooting phase, if one or more Inari units from your army were destroyed, select an infantry or mounted model from your army that was from your army that was within 6 of your destroyed unit. That's a new restriction.
Okay.
And that unit can make a normal move up to D6+1. So they really have taken this out back and shot it. Because what it used to be is just if a unit had died, one of your units could make a normal move. Now you've got to be within 6 inches of the destroyed unit, and it's only a D6+1 move.
Ooh.
It's gone from being the most broken detachment rule in the game to one that is still very powerful when it triggers, but is much more niche and is another level of skill to play around.
Yeah.
Eldar players won't be unhappy about more skill expression. They really didn't need more skill expression in the current codex. It's very hard to go to pilot, as is shown by the win rates. The worry with Inari getting nerfed has always been they needed to buff the rest of the army.
Gotcha.
Because it's honestly a pretty bad codex at the moment.
Yeah.
After the first round of nerfs, which I still think the Asherman nerf was too hasty, I get he could delete a unit like some Terminators when he came out, but it was once per game and it was very limited. I think they overreacted personally. Eldar are an army that people are very scared of when they become meta, as they were at the start of the edition.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong, start of the edition, they were disgusting.
Oh, they were broken.
Absolutely. But they got nerfed accordingly.
Yeah.
The problem is people don't start seeing them as not broken until they're near unplayable, because top level players will still dominate. I mean, they call it the Scara effect for Dark Eldar. I mean, Dark Eldar, although they get buffs in its data slate, are still a bad faction for the most part.
Yeah,
carried by 1 or 2 people's results in tournaments.
Yeah.
So the issue was the reason I'm unhappy is they didn't get compensatory buffs. They got a couple of points buffs. Predominantly, they got nerfs.
Okay.
So before we get into the points, there is one more rules nerf, which just wasn't needed at all. Yvraine got nerfed. Her ability now only gives a wound roll of 1.
A wound roll.
Yeah, it used to be re-roll wound rolls of 1.
Yeah.
So that's a big change in that respect. It just wasn't needed. She wasn't taken in every
No.
Inari list. She wasn't super meta, and she's not taken at all outside of them. It's just not,
No, exactly.
not needed. And the points nerfs are, in my opinion, so the only one that's justified, or you could argue is justified, is Fire Dragons.
Yes. Yeah. And so with the Fire Dragons, the 5-man increased by 10 points to 120. The 10-man is still the same at 220.
Yeah, so thing is, you don't need a 10-man Fire Dragon.
never
It's
do.
just quickly realised a lot of people who weren't familiar with Eldar massively saw the Fire Dragon data slate and went, oh my god, 10 of these is broken, they can kill anything in the game. You're right. The issue is that a 5-man kills most things in the game. You didn't need 10. So, and a 5-man's much, as we stated earlier, you can ignore Overwatch with them. You've got all these powerful buffs. So them going up isn't the end of the world. It is a unit that, in a vacuum, was potentially a bit overtuned.
Yeah.
The issue is that the rest of the army is relatively weak. Without Inari, they're looking at like a sub 45% win rate across the board.
There we go.
With some of their detachments being 40% or below. If you go through the other points nerf, so I believe the Autarch
Yeah, the Autarch went up in points by 10 to 85. Why?
wasn't needed.
No.
Again, he was powerful in Inari. Inari's been gutted. It's just a double whammy. I'm going to say the same thing for Howling Banshees with their change.
They did, yeah. So we got the 5-man went up by 5 points and the 10-man went up by 10
I
points.
think this is the one that annoys me the second most out of all the changes. Do they just not think armies outside of Yanari played Howling Banshees? Like, they're super meta in Aspect Warriors. They're played in other armies. Yanari was where they were best because that's where everything in Eldar was best. It was the best attachment. They didn't need the nerf at all. They were a finely pointed unit.
No. We did have the Fire Prism go down in points, though, by 10 to 150, but that's because, again, they weren't really being played.
No one was touching them. I mean, yeah, 150 points, they're starting to look nice, but their vehicle detachment's the Grotmus one, and to be blunt, it's rubbish.
Yeah.
It's not a good detachment. It's like Hammer of the Emperor with none of the good bits of Hammer of the Emperor, basically.
And that's the point. But yeah.
You don't need more speed in Eldar. Sacrificing firepower for that was irrelevant.
Yeah.
Guard getting speed is a huge change to their playstyle.
Massive. Then the next one you got is the Shining Spears. Both the 3 and the 6 man went up. Down by 10 points and 20 points respectively.
This is a nice change. I don't want to be completely negative. I like this. It makes the Windrider host better, which is a detachment that I think, if any detachment can survive these changes, it is Windrider host. They're the only one that didn't really take any of these units. They're the one that still has the most speed outside of Ynnari. And I think they're probably close to playable now already.
Yep.
If I was an Eldar player and was like trying to be competitive with them, models aside being an issue, I would try and pivot to Windrider host most likely.
Yeah.
I would have said pivot to the Seer Council. However, the Warlock Conclave was nerfed as a 4-man for a reason that I've yet to figure out.
It was.
So I've been trying to think about this since I read it in the data slate. I was looking through because the detachment is best in the Seer Conclave, the Seer Council or Seer Conclave. I always get them mixed up. I think it's Seer Council. It isn't very good. Like it's got some really good play. It's got some really cool tech pieces. With the new Cull the Horde change, there's some really interesting stuff you can do there. But it's so high skill and its win rate is not good. It's not overpowered at all.
Yeah.
The only reason I can think it got changed is because there was one Ynnari list that won an event with it.
And that generally isn't.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, like I said, Ynnari aren't playing this unit. Like people were slowly starting to start playing them. If this had gone on a month or two longer, we may have seen more reason for this. With the Ynnari change, it's a completely baffling.
Well, it's the fact you've gone from a 2-man squad is 55, and then the 4-man squad is up to 130, so up by 20 points.
And it's kind of even more than that, because although the other models didn't get points increases, you only take that 4-man when you're doing the kind of full commit to a block in a Guardian unit now.
Yeah.
So you're already paying a huge amount of points. It's one of the biggest Death Stars in 40k, and it's built around a battle line unit that's toughness 3-1 wound. It didn't need these points changes. It could have just been the Ynnari change, and without the points changes, I'd still say they're massive losers. With these nerfs to units that are, okay, they're not key to other factions, but they're played in a lot of other factions, and the former Warlock Conclave is key to one of the detachments. It's a ridiculous set of changes.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say they're probably the biggest losers of this data slate.
So yeah, the Ynnari scenarios, you've got, say, the Ukraine is going up by 10 points to 260. Then you've got the Archon is going up by 10 points to 85 for one model. And then the Incubi is going up for the 5-man to 85 points, up by 10. And the 10-man squad is going up by 20 to 170.
And the thing is these Ynnari is just bad now. Like, to us, I don't even think it's good without the points nerfs. I think with that Brutal Lethal Intent being changed, you probably have still people still trying to get it to work, but Lethal Intent was such a huge part. I mean, it was being, you could say, abused. It was the only way they were competitively viable.
Yeah. And
they were still really hard to play. It's not the sort of armor you could hand to a brand new player and they were going to walk over you with it. So it needed to be toned down. I think even just the rules change was too drastic personally. And then to have all these nerfs is just, I don't know. It really baffles me.
I say time's going to tell on this one, but as I say, I don't think
I'll be very surprised when the next data slate Eldar aren't getting buffs.
Yeah, and I say we'll just have to wait and see on that one. Really, I say they had their moment in the shun, and I think they've gone through the same effect the Sisters had. They were really good, really powerful. And even say these guys weren't that powerful, but
that's the
they
thing.
Had that drastic drop.
It's just that I like the detachment system. I think it opens up a lot more niche units to be viable, and I like gimmicky lists, but the biggest weakness of it is armies can get nerfed for the sins of one detachment. We've seen it time and time again this edition, and this is yet another example of GW not being able to balance around the detachment system very well. Yeah,
and that's the issue. But moving on, Astra Militarum, what have we got?
So this is where it annoys me even more. I think this is a really nice nerf.
Okay.
So they've gone from hitting something with an absolute hammer to really delicately hitting guard. Now, I know what a lot of casual players will be thinking is guard weren't good.
Yeah.
The issue is that guards are, weirdly enough, one of the biggest discrepancies of win rates between kind of top level players and lower levels. There's a bit of a myth with some armies that, like, no matter how bad Eldar are, they'll be meta playable because of top players. No, most meta players will leave to play an easier faction. You rely on faction experts. Guards, faction experts, are dominating at the moment.
Yeah.
They're doing really, dominating is perhaps a bit of a stretch. They're very strong at the moment. And so the units, they only got points nerfs. But the points nerfs are really carefully applied. So I will say for kind of your kind of kitchen table guard players, or sort of even like at a club level, these might feel a little bit harsh, especially if your mates are playing Death Guard,
sure,
Thousand Suns, because neither of those got touched because of the recency of their thing, which we'll touch on in a minute. So you might feel a bit aggrieved. I will say from kind of a top level perspective, I don't mind these nerfs. I think they're fine.
Makes sense. So the first thing we had was the Bulgrin squad. That actually went down in points.
This was needed. They were really over nerfed in the past. Don't get me wrong, I really don't want to return to triple ball green squads being the meta for guard.
Yep.
They're really unfun to play against, and I don't think they feel very guard.
No, makes sense.
But they did need to be toned down a bit, so that's a nice change. If you were running them previously, you might go back to them, but they're still a bit more expensive than they were, and they're a bit weaker than they were. So.
Yeah, so the 3-man squad has gone down by 10 points, and the 6-man's gone down by 20, so 100 and 200 respectively.
Yeah.
The next one we had was Deathcore of Krieg. The 10-man wasn't touched, but the 20-man was. It went up by 15 points to 145.
So the main reason this was touched is because of the ability to resurrect models. Now, people laugh about GW's balancing for resurrection models. I do it all the time. With a unit like the 20-man Deathcore of Krieg, the ability to kind of leave a unit inside a building, poke 3 guys onto the point, there's very little in the current meta that can take out 20 Deathcore, or even half of that, with 1 volley.
Yeah.
So you just take off the 3 outside the point straight away, and then you can resurrect them back onto the point and hold it next turn.
Yeah.
That's why this has been nerfed. Again, if you're a casual player who's bringing like 60 to 80 of them, not really utilising all the tricks and like kind of, you could say cheese that people would call it, it's going to feel a bit harsh.
Yeah.
You know, again, one of my mates plays Deathcore kind of really fluffy, like Spring Artillery, play Siege Regiment, do all this. This probably isn't a fair nerf for him.
Yeah.
From a top level perspective, I don't think it's needed. I don't think they needed to be toned down massively. I'll agree. I don't. If people are going, this is a bit harsh, I could agree with that. It's also not an unjustified nerf.
Yeah.
They were a strong unit that had very little counterplay in a lot of matchups.
It makes sense in some respects. The next one was the Death Riders. So they actually went down in points. So you've got the 5-man squads going to 60 points, so the minus 10, and the 10-man, again, going down to 120.
These might see play now. I still think they're worse than Rough Riders.
Yeah.
The thing is I'm saying might now, whereas before the answer was they're definitely worse than Rough Riders.
Well, there was a load of them that came in the box set, wasn't there?
Yeah, you get 10 in the box set with Lord Marshal Dreer. They're not super competitively viable. I will admit 10 of them with Lord Marshal Dreer is quite scary in the charge still.
Yeah.
So going down in points might make them more playable, and it might make you, if you're taking Rough Riders, you may now actually consider going to Deathcore instead.
So 2 big changes though for Hammer of the Emperor. We have the Lehman Russ battle tank going up in points by 10 to 185, and then the Taurox going up by 10 to 75.
So both of these are the nerfs that I think are the most justified. I think these are fine nerfs. The Lehman Russ battle tank's kind of gone up for the sins of another tank. Again, it's only massively relevant with the Exterminator, the one that gives extra AP. However, just the ability to reroll hits on multi-melters, it alone is points costs fine. Factor in the battle cannon with the buffs you can apply in guard, like from the Hellhound, like from the Exterminator. 10 points is fine. The Taurox, no other army had access to this unit as cheap as they did.
No,
it's as simple as that. As you say, it's mainly Hammer of the Emperor. Mechanized, it's going to hurt a bit because you've lost one of your tools. Even in Mechanized, I think it was a bit cheap for what you were getting. Yeah. But the ability to fire it through walls, I mean, you had a potential move of 21 inches and still getting the squad out. There was very little counterplay to that for flipping objectives.
Exactly.
With how aggressively objectives need to be flipped now. I could see Hammer of the Emperor just running like 4 of these with like Katakans in to give you if you've done Katakans, you've got an effective 30-inch move on a Katakan squad turn 1. Yeah, that's 20 OC you can throw anywhere. If you deep strike a squad, you can do 30 OC somewhere because you can duty in on them. Yeah, so I don't hate that nerf. And again, if you want to do it, you're just paying a little bit more for it. It's guard. Cutting 40 points is cutting a rattling squad. Yeah, and this is the thing. It's not going to make too much of an impact, but it definitely you might change one of your Russes to a different Russ or cut down a tank commander. That's about it. That's the only. I will say I am surprised that even Russ tank commander didn't go down in points. Okay, that was something that a lot of people theorised was going to happen because it is still just vastly outclassed by the Rogal Dawn tank commander. Right. Okay. Gotcha. There's no reason not to pay the points to upgrade it. So that surprised me a little bit. The Deathcore Rider change was a pleasant surprise for me. I didn't think they'd get touched. Yeah, I think overall guard players, I think they're pretty neutral. There is one rules change as well, which does affect what I did with guard, which is Lord Solar can reorder Titanics again. Oh, okay. Anyone who loves spamming Bane Blades, that's back. This won't touch the competitive scene at all. Bane Blades are completely unplayable on battle maps. Yeah. However, they're even more unplayable when you can't order them. No, exactly. If you like Bane Blade, great. This isn't going to change how viable they are, but if you really love bringing one, you can now. You just, again, have to bring Lord Solar again. Yeah. The only other change we had was a Tempestus Aquilons dropping to like 10 points to 100. And again, I think it's because obviously they had a massive hammer hit when they first came in. I mean, they've been hit 3 times. They've got the points changes before. They had the 3-inch deep strike, which didn't need changing. They had their gun changed, and also their man detachment was gutted. Exactly. So they needed that to happen. Yeah, that's fine. And then Ursula Cree went up in points by 20 to 85. Yeah, that's harsh. She was So this is an example that's hard to explain to people. She was definitely too cheap. like compared to other units, but it was fine in the context of the army. So any other army with this unit, you go, that's broken. But like because it was guard, it's kind of fine. Her going up again, not egregious. If you factor all of these in, most of this are going to be losing probably about 50, 60 points.
Yeah.
At most, you're cutting 10 guardsmen a lot of the time.
And that's the point.
You can live with it. It's
Exactly.
Fine. It's fine.
Moving on, we have then Black Templars.
So Black Templars, we'll just go over their specific changes.
Yep.
To be fair, most of the Space Marine changes are quite focused. There's not any generic changes. So Black Templars, I think it's all points changes. I think it's just a lot of their unique units went down.
Generally speaking, yeah. So you got Chaplain. We had him drop for the 4-man group by 10 points, so to 120. So nice.
Oh, what Grimaldus went down?
Yeah, the Chaplain Grimaldus. Apologies, but yeah, Chaplain Grimaldus went down, and then we have High Marshal Helbrecht dropped by 10 points to 120. Then we had the Primaris Crusader squad. It was the specific detachment, the specific loadout of the 1 Sword Brethren, 11 Initiates, and 8 Neo Hybrids.
Oh, the max, the 20-man squad.
Yeah, exactly, yeah,
okay.
that one. And that dropped by 10 points.
Okay.
Yeah,
did the Sword
310.
Brothers go down at all?
The Sword Brethren did go down,
Nice.
yes. So you had then a drop of the 5-man and the 10-man. We had the 5-man drop by 10 and the 10-man drop by 30. So respectively, you got 140 and then 270 in the points.
Nice. It's always good for unique units and factions to get buffed. Black Templars needed a bit of love. There was not a huge amount of reasons to run them over other Space Marine factions.
Yep.
Sword Brethren going down, their loadout's still so weird for me, the way you have to kit them out. But
Yeah.
I can't say this is going to massively buff the viability of Black Templars. However, if you were already running them or you were on the fence about them, yeah, it's definitely sort of the time to kick on about it, definitely.
No, makes sense. Then another big change, Blood Angels.
Oh, well, they have got one rules change first.
Okay.
So the rules change is relatively minor, but it's nice. Black Rage, previously you had to be within 12 inches of a chaplain to get OC.
That's right.
Now, if you're within 6 inches of any character, you get OC.
Gotcha.
Still 12 inches for chaplains, but 6 inches of other characters as well. Just means if you lose your chaplains, or you want to run them independently, you have got options to turn them on.
Exactly.
It's not going to
works.
affect your list massively.
Not really, no.
But it's a nice change.
Exactly. But the big thing was obviously the point changes.
Huge point changes.
Huge point changes. So the Astorath, you've got 10-point change reduction to 95 points. And you've got the Baal Predator. So,
I love that model.
Yeah, you do. Again, down by 10 points to 125.
I still think there's a Mechanized Blood Angels list in there. I still don't know why I'd run it over normal Blood Angels, but
Yeah.
I'm sure there's one in there.
And you got Chief Librarian Mephiston, again, a reduction of 15 points to 120. And in Command Dante, you've got a 10-point reduction to 120 as well. Moving on, you've got the Death Company Dreadnought, dropping by 20 points to 160.
Still don't think it's playable, sadly.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think so either. But it's still one of those things. It's nice.
nice.
To see a
It's
reduction.
nice, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. You got the Death Company Marines with jump packs. You got the 5-man squad dropping by 10, and the 10-man squad dropping by 10 again. So 120 and 230 respectively.
Yeah, so both of those are nice. They're so much weaker than Index still, but they're finding their points catching up to how much weaker they are. They're definitely viable now.
Yeah.
With those points changes. I know people were already starting to run them. Again, Blood Angels are in this place where a lot of lists were going 4-1. They just were struggling to get the 5-0.
Yeah.
These changes will definitely start pushing those lists
Yeah,
over the edge.
I can imagine it
We're
will.
going to start getting another unit in.
Yeah, exactly. Lamatis dropped by 10 points to
Yeah,
100.
it was a near must take. So same with
exactly.
Astrath, so nice.
Sanguinary Guard dropped, the 3-man and the 6-man. We had a 20-point reduction on both, so 110 and 240.
That is huge.
Huge drop.
20-point reduction on those is honestly kind of mental.
It is nuts.
So we're talking for a 10-man now, you're paying around just over 35 points. For a 3-man, sorry, you're paying just over 35 points a model now.
Yeah. It's nuts, right?
They are really tasty now.
Yeah.
If you were playing the I think it was their Grotmus detachment that was the Sanguinary Guard based one. It may have been in their codex. I'm fairly certain it's the Grotmus one. It's so tasty. I know
Yeah.
people have been trying out with it. I'm just going to double check quickly if it was the Grotmus one.
Well, whilst checking that, we've got then the Sanguinary Priest is dropped by 15 points to 75 as well. So again, nice little tasty point.
If you were playing Blood Angels for the Blood Angels units, this is a huge win for you.
Yeah.
And everyone should be playing their army for their own units.
Yeah, exactly.
It's only Space Marines that have this weird rules change come up.
Yes, exactly.
But no, they're incredible changes, even outside of specific detachment. But being able to just tag in units now, it means that you're not just going to bring potentially 18 Blade Guard with your Blood Angels.
No,
you can
exactly.
actually bring your unique units.
And that's where the way they should be, in my opinion, should be played, is that you're looking at focusing on your unique units in your own sort of
100%.
faction. And it really should be played that way. And the detachments, it was a bit weird when it came with the fact you were doing Bloodless Angels for a very long time.
Yeah, I'm so glad that went.
And yeah, very good change in my opinion that went. As I say, Blood Angels players may not enjoy it, but it's one of those things that definitely felt like you weren't playing your faction to its true thematic experience.
I was half right. So yeah, the Grommet detachment is not quite the one I was thinking of, but Angelic Inheritors is still a huge buff for them. That's the one that affects their character units.
Yeah.
So you're obviously going to be leading your Sanguinary Guard with characters a lot of the time. It's a really nice change for that and just the Liberation Force. Huge buffs for them.
So next one, Chaos Demons.
I can't think of a faction. So I can't think of a faction that got less changes that's impacted the most, weirdly.
Yeah.
So they got better, and it's not because of their changes. So the only change Chaos Demons got was points changes. So I'm fairly confident.
Yeah.
There was one non-points change. We'll start there. So for the Siege detachment, their Pyrogenesis stratagem, which is a bigger damage buff for their units, went down from 2 CP to 1 CP.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why it was 2 CP. It already required you to spend their specific flux tokens for it,
right?
Which is their resource for the detachment. Going down to 1 CP, the biggest thing that detachment lacked was just raw damage.
Yeah.
It really needed this. The only concern I've got is whether they're going to change the index demons to match the codex demons.
Right.
If they do, that detachment's dead no matter what, because pink horrors are unplayable now. If they don't, cool, that's a great change. Really nice. It's just a good change. It increases their damage. Only points change was Nurglings.
Correct.
So Nurglings now can't be taken in 9-mans and went up in points.
Yeah.
The points going up is irrelevant for demons. You weren't taking enough of them. I am very sorry, any of you that bought into the 6x9 Nurgling list for Shadow Legion.
Yeah.
You must have known that wasn't going to stay.
Yeah.
It wasn't particularly great, but in certain games you just won on the spot, and they've shown time and time again they don't like jail lists, especially cheesy ones like that.
Yeah.
I'm amazed Nurglings have lasted in that state for as long as they did.
It was a bit interesting. But the 3-man went up by 5 points and the 6-man went up by 10 points, so 40 and 70 respectively.
Main army that impacts at the moment is probably Chaos Knights.
Yeah.
Because they took a lot of Nurglings.
No, exactly.
The other change is in the Shadow Legion specific. I'm honestly surprised this faction didn't get rules changes. So I know the enhancement went up to 30 points, I believe.
Yeah, so that was the Fade to Darkness that went up by 15 to 30 points in Shadow Legion.
I will say I think this strategy is the most broken enhancement in the game.
Okay.
You put it on a Bloodthirster. It's what it is. It gives the unit the Warp Talon ability. If they kill an enemy unit in the fight phase, you can put them up into reserve.
Oh.
You can put it on a Bloodthirster.
Jesus.
So you just fly in, delete something, and then you're untargetable.
Yeah.
And with all the tricks that demons have naturally, I'm amazed it didn't get rules changed. That's right. So going up to 30 points, you're paying every day of the week. It's irrelevant. You might lose. Just cut a Nurgling squad.
Yeah, exactly. Then you had the Leaping Shadows, again went up by 10 points to 25.
So you might say what I said at the start, why do I think they got impacted so heavily? I think it's because all melee armies really were hoping that Death Guard were going to cop nerfs. And demons, despite not having armor saves, I know Khorne got a few, but bear with me, they don't have armor saves, they're an Invon safe faction. You think, they're pretty resilient to the AP reduction of Death Guard? The issue is the -1 to hit is crippling for their army.
Yeah.
It can just turn off demon units. They've got so little rerolls.
Yeah.
Okay, their big units are still going to take stuff off. The issue is that you're only relying on big units. If you're playing pure monster mash, maybe you're fine. And that's why I'm saying I think it will impact it. A lot of people have slowly been coming away from pure monster mash and trying out like Blood Legion with a few more trading units, or Scintillating Legion with a few more trading units, or even In Shadow, which is definitely the best demon detachment now. Now, I think it's just so poor matched up into Death Guard. Thousand Suns, who I think are going to be really strong now. They match up okay into, I believe. It really depends on what the Thousand Suns list is, to be honest.
We're going to have to see how that works out, really, aren't we?
But I do think this could lead to in a few months, we could be seeing incredibly different demon lists from what we're seeing now, despite nothing actually happening to them. Yeah,
the only other change is that the Slaughter Thirst enhancement inside the Blood Legion went down by 10 points to 25.
Yeah, nice. It's an okay enhancement. Like, it's a strong enhancement. For 35 points, it's probably overcosted. I don't know if 25 points will make any difference.
No, exactly. Moving on, Chaos Knights.
No changes.
Exactly.
It's too close to their codex. It's out next week.
Yeah.
They were never going to get changes.
No.
We'll skip ahead. I'll spoil it. Normal Knights have no changes either.
Yeah.
It's just way too close to their codexes for them to have any meaningful changes.
No,
that's probably the biggest issue with this data slate, is it's sandwiched between, like, we've had a load of loot releases recently that haven't been touched, and loads coming soon that can't be touched. So it's only half the factories have been changed, weirdly. So
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of chaos, let's go on to the standard chaos. So Chaos Space Marines themselves.
okay, this could be quite a long section, I feel. There's been a
Yes.
lot here. So we're not going to touch on the new detachments.
No. So that is one thing we're going to do in a separate video. We're going
Yeah.
to look at the new detachments in their own merit.
Otherwise, this
see
would
how
be
they
a
perform.
4-hour long video.
Yes, exactly. And we need to.
don't- yeah.
We just have to.
So we're not going to
decide.
touch detachments here. Thankfully, I don't think the buffs actually massively affect the new detachment. Obviously, the Demon Prince change does, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
Exactly.
So we'll start with the Lord Discordant. Rejoice for anyone who loves this model, which is anyone who has eyes. It's one of the one of the best looking models in 40k.
It is.
The Lord Discordant Hellstalker, and it's been completely unplayable for the whole edition.
Yeah.
It's now got 5 buffs in this data
Jesus.
slate. I don't know why it's got 5 done to it.
Okay.
I think 3 of them would have put it to playable. I think 4 would have been like, oh, this is pretty good. 5 has made this unit a near auto taking 2 detachments.
So what are the 5 buffs then?
So its movement's gone from 10 to 14.
So big jump.
It's a mounted model, so it needs high movement because it
Yeah.
can't go through walls. But yeah, 14 inches is an obscene movement.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, it doesn't look that quick.
Yeah.
The fact that it's outpacing, rhinos now is a
Exactly.
bit daft.
Yeah.
It's gone to a 4+ inform. This one's probably the most fine. It should have had one always. It's
Sure.
180 point model
Yeah.
off the top of my
Set
head.
in that respect.
So it needed that. And then its abilities have been buffed. So Corrupt Machine Spirits now reads, at the start of your shooting phase, you select a visible enemy unit within 12 of this model. So it didn't used to require visibility.
Okay.
So that's a nerf.
Right.
However, what it now does is you'd roll a D6. On a 2 to 3, the unit takes D3 mortal wounds. On a 4 to 5, they take 3. And on a 6, any fans of the new Doombolt will be aware of this one, take D3 plus 3.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Okay.
the biggest thing is this is very similar to grenade. Obviously, it's
Yeah.
going to work out to a similar amount of wounds to grenade. You're doing, on average, about 2.5, 3 wounds with it when you use it. So it's a bit worse than grenade. The difference is this has no restriction on only one of your Lord Discordants can do it a turn.
Jesus.
Okay.
Just to correct, the Lord Discordant is 160.
I think he was 180 when it came out. I think when he's
Yeah.
gone down previously, 160, he's so nice.
Yeah.
So that ability, again, it can only target vehicles. It is limited. We are in a vehicle edition. Mortarian's Hammer is one of the most meta factions.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of really strong vehicle lists. Even if there isn't, you can pop transports.
Yeah.
So it's a great ability. When you're running 3 of them in Renegade Raiders, you'll be really happy that multiple of them can use it.
Yep.
His other ability is now been changed to select a visible enemy vehicle unit. Again, it didn't require visibility before. It's still the same ability, just people who don't know, which is probably everyone, because he's
Yeah.
played Lord Discordance. At the start of the shooting phase, you select an enemy vehicle unit until the end of the phase. Each time a Heretic Astartes targets it, they reroll a wound roll of 1.
Nice.
So he does just delete vehicles
Yeah.
now. And with that, his melee got a buff. So it's always had Lance, but it's now gone to 5 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 8 now, AP 3, damage 3.
Jeez.
So yeah, it means that he's taking off Custodians on 2s.
Oh, exactly.
2s into 2s, and Custodians just need to make their inroll, they die.
Yeah.
So the reason I keep saying Renegade Raiders is because he's mounted, and a lot of their stratagems affect mounted units. Big one is they've got an enhancement that can go on a mounted character that gives them a 6-inch scout.
Right.
So this scouting with a 14-inch move, gaining an extra AP.
Jeez.
He does have guns that didn't get changed. I don't have them to hand.
Yeah.
They're okay.
Yeah.
But he's got quite a few of them.
With that melee profile now, that's just
So
nuts.
those getting AP, and it's decently tough. It's like a mini tank, basically,
Yeah,
at this
yeah.
point. And a big thing is, okay, it's not a tank, which does mean it doesn't interact with a few rules. However, it's not a tank.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have any of the negatives of being a vehicle. You don't
Yeah.
have anti-vehicle against it. You don't get bring it down against it. I'll be gobsmacked if people aren't rebuilding Renegade Raiders with 3 of these in.
Yeah, I can
like
imagine
he
so,
looks
yeah.
so powerful.
really
I think
does.
the only thing that looks more powerful now in the Codex is Vashtor, which is a statement I didn't think I'd be making this morning.
Yeah.
So I love Vashtor. His
It's
model.
a beautiful model.
That's not how I would describe this model.
Oh, no, it's stunning, though.
I think
It
it's
really
quite
is.
goofy.
I think it's beautiful. I love it.
I love the dark mech aesthetic. I just
yeah.
think he's not quite hit the mark personally for me.
That's fair enough.
But he's a very unique model. In
Yeah,
40K,
no, he
we can
is,
say
yeah.
that. And he's very unique model rules wise and has been before. Now they're good unique reasons, not just bad. So first of all, he gets lone op when he's near a demon vehicle now.
Oh, okay.
So demon vehicle is quite a restriction.
Yeah.
Outside of one detachment, which we'll touch on. The demon vehicles are just your venom crawlers, forge fiends, mauler fiends, hell drakes.
Yep.
And then there is another one which we'll touch on later, which doesn't exist anymore as far as I'm concerned. Reorder reality has now been changed, and unlike other big characters, he doesn't pick. He has all of these abilities always.
Okay.
So reorder reality is each time an enemy unit within 18 targets him, subtract 1 from the hit roll, and until the end of the phase, that attack has those ranged weapons have hazardous. Sorry.
Okay, so you're -1 to hit, and they then gain hazardous.
So previously, you always gave them hazardous.
Right.
Now it's an extra -1 to hit. So this ability was always had a bit of niche effect.
Yeah.
Because it prevents split fire nicely as well. Because let's say I've got one anti-tank gun that I'm putting into him, and then all of my other little guns into this other unit. They all gain hazardous, not just the ones targeting him. So it's a nice rule. You might do some chip damage, but before it's just like I just don't care. I'm just going to shoot him. Now that he's got low knot, it's normal low knot, not 18 inches. So you have to get within his
12,
low knot
yeah.
to you're going to be always having this penalty.
Yeah.
And it's -1 to hit as well, so he's basically got pseudo stealth.
Yeah.
He makes him a lot more bulky, and
That's
for his
beautiful.
points, I actually don't know his points. If we get the data slate up, we'll have to check. Because again, sorry, I'm not an expert on these models. They haven't been played ever this edition. If you've got the points down, don't you?
Yes. So
what's Vashtor's points?
Vashtor at the moment is now. Let's have a little look. See, Vashtor, he's at 175.
Oh yeah. So these abilities already sound really good. If you look at his defensive profile, you go, yeah, that's pretty much 170. The issues he had before was his aura and his weapon were kind of weak.
Yeah.
Neither of them are weak anymore. So unholy mechanisms, again, still only targets demon vehicles. It used to give them +1 strength in an aura of 6 inches.
Okay.
Which is a nice buff, hits some break points. Now it's
Yeah.
+2 strength,
Oh.
which basically gives your models +1 to wound a lot of the time near him.
Okay.
And sometimes gives you more than that. The obvious one is sticking 3 Forge Fiends near Vashtor
Yeah.
is filthy, especially in Soulforged Warpack. The Demon Engine attachment.
Right, okay.
For one, in that attachment, you can make any vehicle a Demon Engine.
Oh.
So if you want a Predator to
Yeah.
have that, and also when they pact, they get +1 to wound innately.
Jeez.
So it just means that Forge Fiends are going to annihilate things near Vashtor.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, you're paying a lot of points for that block.
You are, but
It's
still.
killing its points back.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a deadly block. Again, the issue with Vashtor is saying, okay, all of this, that's probably enough to make him good.
I'd hope so.
It would be good. The only weakness he's potentially got is his melee is a little bit lackluster.
Okay.
Don't worry, they solved that as well.
Oh, good.
So his strike got a minor buff, and
Right.
I do mean minor. It went from AP2 to AP3.
Still, that's enough.
It is anti-vehicle 4 plus a devastating wounds already.
Oh, well then, yeah.
So against vehicles, you didn't really care anyway.
Not really.
He is strength 14, so you are wounding most vehicles in 3s. So
Yeah.
it was coming in, and against none vehicles, it's a really nice change.
Yeah.
So his strike is great and always has been decent. It's 6 attacks, hitting on 2, strength 14, now AP3, damage 3. Damage 3 is a bit low for a strike, but it's still enough to kill anything below a death
Yeah,
round.
generally speaking, you're looking kind of the highest points.
It's the sweep that got buffed massively.
Okay.
So like a lot of sweeps, it's gone up to damage 2, which again, I think is justified for this sort of model. It's gone to 12 attacks as opposed to 10. That's just for consistency.
Yeah.
Sweeps should always be double what the strike
They
is.
should be, yeah.
So that's fair. And it's got an AP now. So it's gone to AP1 damage 2.
Okay.
It's still strength 8. And it's anti-vehicle 4 plus, always was.
Yeah.
The big change now, devastating wounds.
Oh, God.
So now it means, on average, if you hacked him, he does 12 devastating wounds to a vehicle with his sweep.
Jeez.
You never use his strike against a vehicle now.
Yeah.
It's never worth it.
Why would you?
Yeah, there's no point now. It's got devastating. It's.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's an army that puts out more devastating wounds than Chaos Space Marines. I don't know if there was an army before this change with Vashtor and with potentially 3 Lord Discordants doing
Yeah.
mortal wounds to vehicles. Playing vehicles, especially ones reliant on invons into Chaos Space Marines, is going to feel really rough.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So they're the only changes, sort of rules wise.
Yep.
They did get a few minor point tweaks.
They did, yeah. So Chaos Lord with Jump Pack went down in points by 10, so
Needed.
to 80 points. It was needed.
The meter was not very good.
Yeah, no, exactly. Dark Apostle. So any fans of the Combat Patrol
Yeah.
magazine that came in a couple of weeks ago.
And a gorgeous model, I'll agree this
It
time.
was very, very, very good. It's still on my list of things to paint. I really do want to do that. But that went down by 10 points to 65.
Nice, that actually might be worth taking.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a nice buff to the Chaos Cult list immediately for the 4 of you that play it.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. Then the Felgold Beastman, 10-man, went down by 15 points to 70.
okay, this is probably my hottest take of the edition. I think this is busted. I think this is a ridiculous change.
Okay.
So I liked the unit at 85 points.
Yeah.
I'll admit it was bad at 85 points.
Yes.
I liked it. It was a bad unit. The ability to strategic reserve turn 1 with a 70-point unit, as someone who's played Zangors for 2 editions now, it's so surprisingly effective. I think if you're torn between taking like a 20-point enhancement I would upgrade a unit cultist to this.
Yeah.
You're now paying 20 points every unit cultist for this. You still want one cultist unit for sticky, but I think a unit that's this instead, just for the option. I mean, at worst, you're overpaying for toughness 4 cultists.
Sure.
At best, it's a huge tool for delaying an opponent because they can arrive from rapid ingress turn 1 as well.
Oh, okay.
Because their ability, the way it's worded, is just they can arrive a turn earlier always.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And if you've got the ability to uppy downy them, which I believe Chaos Cults do, I could be wrong about that. I've not played Chaos Cults myself. They can come in from reserve again early. So you can start them in reserve or redeploy them into reserve and then rapid ingress them. And just your opponent can't leave a squishy unit on their backfield. They're not going to kill a full guards unit by themselves. They're only 2 attack strength 4 each. But they will win that fight eventually.
Yeah, exactly.
They are a really annoying threat. I think with the way you're going to have to rebuild Chaos Space Sprint lists, I would certainly consider them.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Next one you have is the Master of Possession. Dropped by 10 points to 60. So again, all positive.
Yep.
On that side of things. And then the Traitor Enforcer, down by 10 points to 55.
Great change for Chaos Cults again. If you're playing Chaos Cults, you've gained about 70, 80 points of the status slate, which is about another nearly 20 cultists.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a great win for them. And if you were teching any of these units, I know a lot of Chaos players sort of experimenting with like 1 or 2 of these units listed as like a little bit of off meta things, just reward you a little bit more for these little tinkers. I think Chaos players are going to have to rebuild their lists their most. That's not a negative. This is for a good reason. Eldar players are going to have to rebuild their lists as well, but they won't be as happy about it.
Nope.
You're rebuilding sort of thing like, can I squeeze these more powerful things in? Which is good. Chaos Space Marines were a bit lackluster. Again, I know I'm going to keep saying Death Guard, but they're a melee-focused army. Death Guard beat that. Emperor's Children kind of did a lot of what Chaos Space Marines did, but better. Chaos Space Marines is kind of a weird, they can do everything spot. Now with these, you can hone in a bit more, and it just makes their general jack-of-all-tradiness even better with a bit more utility.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that's fair enough. So moving on, we have Dark Angels.
Again, we're not touching the detachment in this video.
But no real changes there as far as I can see.
There's one model that got changed.
Okay.
Just a minor model. Lionel Johnson's insane.
Just the minor one then.
Yeah, just a minor one.
Yeah,
I'll be honest.
No changes. Just the Primarch.
I don't know why they've given him this ability.
Okay.
It's my honest description. Before I start, I haven't looked at their points changes. Did he go up in points?
No.
Okay.
There are absolutely no points changes on Dark Angels.
Don't like that. So his ability, he's all secrets revealed, has now been changed to an ability called Mist Wreathed Shadow Realms.
Okay.
Which reads, in your command phase, if this unit is not within engagement range of 1 or more enemy units, you can remove it from the battlefield and place it in strat reserve.
Well, hang on. In the command phase.
In your command phase. So you rightly point out, most uppy downies happen in your opponent's end of your opponent's turn.
Yeah.
The reason for this is so you haven't seen your secondary objectives.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so surprised by it, because the point is you have to decide whether you're taking them up before you've seen what missions you've got.
Yeah. So the most important thing is you can pick him up and deep strike him in the same turn. He does have deep strike. You can do this turn 1.
Oh, you just pop it in wherever it needs to go then.
The 2 most obvious applications of this are, if you need a secondary score to turn 1, you can use line to do it.
Yeah.
I think this is a lot riskier than people are giving it credit for. He's the toughest Primarch in the game, but you're still putting your Primarch in a scoring position.
And that's...
Don't get me wrong, if you want to score like a cheeky sabotage, you can push him up early and do that sort of thing. Just don't go too overzealous with it.
No.
The other thing, however, is if you go first as Dark Angels, Lion is ridiculous because you could pick him up turn 1 and then you could rapid ingress him turn 1.
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that.
So you can rapid ingress him turn 1 and then charge in your turn 2.
It's a big risk play, but still.
Yeah, and if you're playing a fast enough list to keep up with him, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I will say we're not talking about it in much depth. I believe he No, does he? I'll wait into the detachment, actually. I don't know if he benefits from the detachment rule or not. If he does, it's obscene.
Yeah.
That's not the only change he got.
Okay.
So Martial Exemplar got changed. It now reads, while a friendly Starters unit is within 6 inches of this model, each time model in that unit makes a melee attack, you reroll a hit roll of 1 and reroll a wound roll of 1.
Oh.
Yeah, nice change. And the Emperor's Shield has now been changed to if the strength characteristic of the attack is greater than the toughness characteristic of this model, subtract 1 from the wound roll. I believe it just did -1 always before.
Okay.
Let me just get my phone up. Sorry, none of us are Dark Angels players in our group. We don't have every faction represented. We have one who plays Ravenwing a bit, but he doesn't use Lionel Johnson. So
that's fine.
I think the only time I've seen him was at an event and it was a doubles event, and my teammate killed him.
Oh,
so
well, there you go
I don't have to worry about any of his rules.
Yeah, no. It wasn't taken very much recently, though, was it? In terms of the
the form of Dark
Yeah.
Angels is there's not a huge amount of reason to play them over other Space Marine detachments.
no, and that's just the point is that they had the what was it called, the White Scars detachment? What was that for the Stormlance?
Stormlance
Yeah.
Assault Force.
yeah.
So outside of that, there wasn't a huge amount that was like kind of special to them that was good.
Yeah.
With a new detachment, that does it very tasty, and their unique units are placed pretty well in this kind of meta, I feel. So currently, the Emperor Shield has changed completely, actually. So the Emperor Shield ability used to be when he makes a saving throw on a 6, the attacking unit takes a mortal wound.
That's right, yeah.
Now it's if the strength characteristic is greater than his toughness, -1 to the wound roll.
Oh, so he's got the bodyguard roll.
He's got bodyguard built in. So I can tell you right now, he definitely doesn't get the detachment roll, because that's the detachment roll.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So he definitely doesn't get that. That could have read ahead and answered my own question. And Martial Exemplar used to be +1 to hit on melee. Now it's reroll a hit roll 1 and reroll a wound roll of 1. As far as I see, that's a big buff to him, the reroll, because that affects himself. And the +1 to hit didn't really matter for himself, obviously.
Not really, no.
So, no, overall, massive changes. He's potentially lost a tiny bit of damage with his mortal wounds being taken away.
Yeah.
That's very much a gimmicky thing.
Yeah, kind of niche-y, wasn't it?
It was more of a gimmick. He's got a 3+ invuln. So,
Yeah.
just him being tough to kill is kind of what
That's just
matters.
nuts.
So, yeah. Best uppy downy in the game on a 3+ invuln Primarch is certainly a decision that alone could put Dark Angels back into the meta, and I think their attachment will certainly help with that.
No, will do, definitely. Moving across, Death Guard. No real changes.
So they have 2 changes, technically.
Yeah.
One is directly to Death Guard.
Yes.
Which is that Death Shroud's ability doesn't work in your opponent's turn anymore.
No, so because you've got the restriction now.
In your movement phase.
Exactly. It's gotta
So you
be
can't
in
rapid
your-
ingress them 6 inches away, which
Yep.
is a great change. I've seen a few people weirdly online saying this is like, oh, that's a crippling nerf. It's really not.
isn't.
It's really not. Like, it does hurt them.
Yeah,
They're
being
still
able to
great.
drop outside of 6 and still charge is nutty.
The other nerf is much more niche. It only really affects Mortarian's Hammer, and I don't think many Mortarian's Hammer players are running them. Defilers might as well have been removed from the game.
Oh, okay.
They now have to be put on a base.
Oh.
So anyone who's seen this model knows that the only way it's really movable is by doing janky stuff with its legs. Putting it on a 160mm base.
Oh,
same as the Soul Grinder for Chaos Demons, which is a big hit for them as well.
It does still have the ability of moving through
In
its-
Mortarian's Hammer,
Yeah, in Mortarian's
so it's
Hammer.
only playable now in that detachment completely, and it is still massively nerfed there.
Yeah.
It's really hard to fit in 160 more base.
Yeah, no. So, as I said, it was moving through friendly vehicle units. It could move through them as though they weren't there. But
Even
still,
doing that, fitting a whole base that far is very hard.
That's, if you've got to put it on a base, that's horrid.
Well, the funniest thing about the Soul Grinder getting that rule as well is in the kit, it specifically tells you not to put it on a base for 40k. It specifically tells you
Well, to be
that.
fair, it is an old kit.
It's a very old kit.
Yeah,
But,
yeah. The only other change is obviously the Nurglings went down in up in point.
For the Demon Detachment.
Yeah.
It is a minor nerf, I guess.
And so there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to be annoyed in some respects around the fact that Death Guards seem to be running a fairly good meta game at the moment, especially with Mortarian's Hammer, and then not having any changes recently. But there hasn't been enough time for the data to be pulled through, I don't think.
So I don't think they're going to keep spiking up in win rate. I think they're going to plateau pretty soon.
Right.
I don't think they're going to sort of reach a 65% win rate anytime soon. I do think they should have been nerfed. I think they should have reacted, not majorly, done a few minor tweaks. I don't think we needed weeks of data or months of data to see that Death Shroud were too strong. And this nerf just isn't enough. There's just a couple of units that are too cheap.
Yeah, you might find that there may be just an FAQ that comes out next month.
Maybe. I think the big 2 are Death Shroud and Blight Drones.
Yes. No, the Blight Drones,
The Blight
they
Drones
are
are just too cheap.
Stupidly
For their points.
good.
They're
They are
just
stupidly good.
So
I'm
I-
running 3 of them in my list, so there you go. That tells you one thing.
That certainly will be probably the biggest criticism coming from this data slate. I don't think it should be. I think there's actually worse things. I think Eldar is a worse change than Death God getting numb.
Yep.
But as I said, we've just got to wait and see. It is too soon. If they don't get touched for 3 months, that is going to be quite rough. I will admit. I will say that's not going to be a great experience for a lot of players.
That's fair enough. Death Watch.
So Death Watch got no changes, which is just really good for them. They're actually in a really good spot. They're just not played a lot. They're one of those armies that kind of sneaks under the radar. I really expected their special issue ammunition to get changed to only affect bolters again. The fact you get like anti-infantry 2+ guns with special issue ammunition is really tasty. I don't think they're going to suddenly become a meta threat. I know a few people in my area are switching to Deathwatch to try them out for competitive play, so we might see a few more lists pop up. They do have a decent matchup into Death Guard because they're not hugely melee reliant. You can play them quite ranged. I think Thousand Suns may prove quite tricky for them.
Yeah.
They don't have a huge amount of invuln access. Their big Gravis blocks can get torn to shreds quite easily, so that may be the biggest curtail. But I think as a Deathwatch player, you're pretty happy to sneak under the radar again.
That's fine. Moving on, Jakari. What we got?
So a very minor detachment change to their Grotwoods detachment. One of the cooler detachments I think everyone would admit, the Reaper's Wager, where the Harlequins and Dark Eldar are betting. Now it's if that model's unit is winning the Rager, you reroll a hit roll of 1. If you're losing, you reroll a hit roll of 1 and reroll a wound roll of 1 instead. Basically, it just means you get something on your army the whole time. It's not just the bits that are losing. So this isn't going to change a huge amount. It just makes the army a little bit easier and a little bit more crisp to play. The army needs more than this. It's a nice change, I guess.
That's fair enough. In terms of the points, we had Mandrakes, both the 5 and the 10 dropped by 5 and 10 points respectively to 65 and 120. The Rider dropped by 5 points to 75. The Ravager dropped by 10 points to 100. And then the Venom dropped by 5 points to 65.
Yeah, I mean, all needed, all good. They're still not good.
Yeah.
The army just needs its code desperately.
Yeah, it really does.
Basically, it's really suffering. It's not in a good spot at all.
No,
As a
exactly.
faction. You've got a couple of players that are making it work. I don't envy them. They just look like a worse version of other factions, to be honest.
Yeah. So let's move on to the new faction in 40k that's recently been brought out. Emperor's Children.
Emperor's Children, again, got no rules changes. As someone who kind of was really excited for Emperor's Children, and the amount of data sheets that came out kind of toned my excitement back a bit, the lack of options. I'm a little bit annoyed the underperforming factions, the detachments didn't get buffs.
Yeah.
Again, they're relatively new, so we couldn't have expected wholesale changes. There's a couple of detachments that just don't work.
Right, okay.
That I expected to get rules, just reworks. That I'm a bit disappointed. They expect a strong word. I would have liked to have got reworks that didn't. As it is, if you're playing competitive Emperor's Children, they did get nerfed quite heavily.
Sure.
So with points.
No, makes sense. So the points themselves, you've got the Demon Prince with wings, went up by 20 points to 200.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically might as well be a 40 or 60 point increase because you're taking 2 or 3 in every list.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the current meta was 3 of them, so that's 60 points.
Yeah, so big jump. Fulgrim, down by 20 to 365.
Maybe he's playable at those points. Maybe. Maybe you can start squeezing him in as opposed to just come having this conversation again in 3 months' time when he goes down to 350.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think he's good.
No, it's one of those things that it's going to take a good couple of weeks.
He just doesn't do anything you want.
Yeah. It is an interesting one. Lucius the Eternal, 10-point increase to 150.
I don't like that change. I mean, I'm one of the few. I just don't like Lucius as a data sheet at 140 already.
Yeah.
I know he is meta, so I am just wrong in that take.
Yeah.
But I didn't like him at that point. I think going to 150, I'd like him even less now. People will still take him if you were. If you weren't, you won't start taking him.
That's a personal opinion. It's fair enough. Noise Marines, block of 6, went up by 10 points to 145.
Probably needed.
Yeah.
It's probably the biggest faction this nerfs because Emperor's Children aren't going to cut these.
No, they're not.
You're just paying 30 points extra. The biggest army this nerfs is Chaos Space Marines.
Yeah.
And Renegade Raiders because a lot of people are taking 3 of those now.
Yeah.
You can still take 3 of them. They still fit into the 500 points you're allowed, but we're paying a lot more, having to fit in the Lord Discordants that you want to fit in.
Yeah.
We may start seeing them cut again, maybe in favour of Ruby Marines.
Yeah,
so
that's fair enough. The only other change was detachment change with the enhancement. You had the Pledge of Unholy Fortune up by 10 points to 30 in the conceded detachment.
Yeah, so Code of the Conceded is the only detachment. So Carnival of Excess is seeing a bit of experimentation.
Yeah.
But Code of the Conceded is how you play Emperor's Children.
Yeah.
It's clear the army was built around that detachment rule, much like World Eaters were built around Berserker Warbands, so everything's going to be priced accordingly around that.
Yeah, exactly.
Overall, this just means you're going to cut one of your shooter units, probably. You're going to just you're most likely going to be playing the exact same list as you've been playing before, -1 Infractor, or more realistically, -1 Tormentor unit. It's going to hurt. You're going to be a bit weaker. Biggest issue you've got is I just think it's near unplayable as Death Guard. But other than that, you're going to be pretty much the same faction. I'm personally disappointed. I think Emperor's Children were very much expecting this. So no one's particularly surprised by the changes they've received.
That's fair enough. Next, Gene Stealer Cult.
Very minor tweaks that are both very nice. This is much more of an internal balance pass. Gene Cult are in a perfectly fine place. I'd say they're one of the more balanced factions.
Yep.
Pretty low representation, but that's just due to the faction they are. They've got one very meta list in Host of Ascension, and then people are making waves with Final Day, mostly a couple of Biosantic Brood Surge, and this affected a little bit of both. So big changes. Atalan Jackals went down in points.
They did.
It's the only points change.
Yeah, the 5-man squad went down by 5 to 75, and the 10-man squad went down by 10 to 150.
So it just puts them in line with pure strains. So it means that probably a lot of lists will go down to 2 pure strains, 1 Atalan Jackal, just to get you a bit more turn 1 pressure, just to have a few more wounds to chuck out.
Yep, makes more sense.
And it's nice about for Rusted Claw because you're saving 30 points.
Yeah.
And then they get another change that's not really represented very well on any of the balance passes. Which is that they went down in reinforcement, resurgence points.
Oh, okay.
So my only critique is they've highlighted the change in red only on the actual number. So as someone who's colourblind, I missed it on my first read through. I really struggled with that. If the whole line was red, I would have seen it a lot easier. So what it is they've put Atalan Jackals and Pure Strains, they've made their 5-mans the same as Acolyte 5-mans. They cost 2 points to bring back,
right?
Which means you'll actually consider bringing them back now.
Okay.
Because before, if you bought 1 back, you were costing yourself a unit. If you bought 3 back, you were costing yourself 2 units.
Ooh.
Putting them in line with the others means bringing back 5-mans are better. You'll never bring back 10-mans still. I really don't understand why the 10-mans for Jackals and Gene Stealers have stayed at 6.
Yeah.
Because you were never bringing them back anyway. And they're not buff reliant. They're not a unit that gets massive leverage out of stratagem buffs.
Sure.
And most of our stratagems that do buff big units require characters, which when you bring them back, they don't get characters. So I think they could have done to 4. I don't think anyone would have took them anyway. It's a pretty irrelevant point, but just for kind of perfecting internal balance, that's my only critique. It's overall a very nice change that ultimately might change 1 unit for competitive Gene Stealer lists.
Makes sense.
It's not going to change a lot. For casual players, it's nice.
No, it's fair enough. So the next one, we have Grey Knights.
Yep, so the only change here is pretty minor. It's just that the Hallowed Ground detachment role in the Warpbane Task Force, their Grotmus detachment, it has to arrange attacks, have to target visible targets, or make some melee attack. The only thing this has changed is if you're fighting through a wall, you get your buff.
Right, okay.
Before, because it had to avoid indirect fire getting the buff, if you were fighting a target in melee you couldn't see because it was through the wall, you didn't get the detachment ability.
Oh.
It was very janky. Not many people knew it. But yeah, they've just ironed that out, so you don't have to worry about that.
Fair enough.
And then they've got a couple of points changes, I believe.
Yeah, so they had the Brotherhood Champion, went down by 10 points to 70.
It's a really nice change. I think already you could consider bringing one of them with a strike squad for a bit of mid-board pressure at 70. I really would consider one now.
Then you've got the Brotherhood Terminator Squad, the 10-man specifically, dropping by 20 points to 400.
I like they're trying to make the more unviable units more viable.
Yeah.
I still don't think it's going to make the 10-mans more taken. You could consider it with a Grandmaster, just because of the strat access, but I don't think it's going to replace either mass 5-mans or the more often used mass Nemesis Dread Knight.
Yeah.
I think they're going to stay the same. I honestly didn't expect any changes for Grey Knights because they're relatively soon codex-wise.
Yeah.
So it's a pleasant, nice change to clarify a bit of an unclear ruling and potentially give you, if you're not really playing them much because you're waiting for the codex, you've now got maybe 1 or 2 list changes you can try now before the codex comes.
Yeah,
But it's
there
nice in that
is one
respect.
more change with the Paladin squad, which is the 10-man specifically again, dropping by 20 points to 430.
Yeah, so the exact same statement. Again, I don't think it makes the 10-mans any more viable. I have run 10-man Paladins in the past as opposed to 10-man Brotherhood, so maybe we'll see 30 Paladins rock up at a tournament now, someone try and beef it out that way. The problem is they match up quite poorly into Death Shroud. So.
Yeah, no, again, very similar. Imperial Agents.
So this is the biggest loss of the data slate, because why didn't they get any changes?
No,
I
absolutely
don't.
none.
So ignoring. Sorry, I need to be calm because it annoys me so much. This codex. The more data slates go on without changes, the more this codex feels like a cash grab.
Yeah,
I was really excited when it first came out. This is my codex sat in front of me. I was super excited for the army. I love these sort of weird armies, and all the units inside are super cool. I don't get why it doesn't have an army rule.
Yep.
No one can convince me of a reason why, and no one's trying to be fair. Only GW know why they didn't give them one. And I don't know why they bothered doing separate point costs for allies and then in the codex if they're not going to experiment with the in-codex costs. It's not a playable codex. It's still not a playable army. They're super cool. You can obviously play them, but they're not usable really at a top level unless you're incredibly specific. And every strength they've got other armies can bring. If you like the scoring playstyle of Imperial Agents, I endorse you to try Kroot or Chaos Cult. They are just a better version of it.
Yeah, sure.
So they needed changes. They didn't need massive ones. Just I'm fine with them being really weak.
Yep.
But just give them an army rule and a couple of point reductions and just see if they can do anything with them. But yeah, it's just I think it's quite lazy that they've not changed them.
It does feel that way, doesn't it?
That's my only comment on that.
As we said earlier on, Imperial Knights, no changes.
No changes. Codex is the same.
Yeah, exactly. Why would you?
Yeah.
Moving on, Leagues of Votan.
So Leagues of Votan are a really stable place at the moment, fitting the Dwarf army. They're going nice and steady, getting a few good results here or there. They're not breaking the meta apart, but they've got good matchups. The same players keep chucking along, and at a casual level, they're a pretty solid list. They know what they're doing. Just a nice quality of life change here. They have two characters that come with drones with them. So they've got the Grimnir, who comes with 2 Corvs, or Corvies, which are little like psychic sort of with bolters, little psychic drones with bolters. They don't take up space in transports. And the Brock here Ironmaster, his little drones don't take up space in transports either.
Okay.
Importantly for the Brock here, his assistant, that is still a person, sadly, so he does take up space in the transport.
Okay.
So you cannot put a Brock here with 5 warriors into a Sagitaur, sadly. However, you can put a Grimnir with 5 warriors into a Sagi, which is probably the most interesting change. It means you can get a really tough unit. So you, especially a Rhino, a Razorback size transport, fly it forwards, get out a unit of toughness 6 infantry with 8 models across them with a decent psychic attack. If you want to be really spicy, I had been looking a little bit at doing triple Grimnir lists.
Yep.
You could put all 3 of them in the same Sagitaur now if you wanted to, which is a nice explosive burst.
Yep.
It's not going to change the competitive meta, I don't believe, but it gives you a few more options to play around with, which really is all Votan players have been asking for the whole of this year, just more ways to play the army.
Yeah.
I really hope that Codex is soon.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how it comes. No points changes, though, for Leagues of Votan. Just nice and easy.
They honestly didn't really need them.
No, which is fair enough. And so, no real changes there. But as I say, we've got the Codex hopefully coming soon. And so, therefore...
There's just not many levers left they can pull on Votan, really, without, wholesale reworking the army, which they've shown they don't like doing in indexes anyway.
Yeah.
So it's just a waiting game, unfortunately.
Yeah, makes sense. Moving across, my absolute nemesis, the Necrons.
Well, it's fine, because if you like Canop Tech Court, they got buffed a lot.
Oh, I love
So
it.
there's no rules changes, so it's going to be all over to you for these. It's mainly points changes.
Yeah, so we've got the Canoptic Doomstalker, dropped by 5 points to 140. It needed it. It wasn't really being taken very much.
It's still not going to get taken very much.
Yeah, I don't think it will. But a friend of ours, so actually producer Danny, you may have seen on the channel before, he will love this because he loves his Doomstalker. We've then got the Canoptic Wraiths. We've got the 3-man and the 6-man, dropping 5 and 10 points respectively to 110 and 220.
Again, they're playing it very safe. They're not drastic changes. It will make them a tiny bit more viable. And again, it gives legs to sort of more underplayed detachments.
And generally speaking, you want to be running a 6-man brick just for the fact of the
leaders are so vital for Necrons.
Exactly, they really are. Then you've got the Death Marks, dropping 5 and 10 respectively for the 5-man and 10-man to 60 and 120.
That's really the best change because one of those is mandatory in every list near enough. So
the
them
5-man,
going down's nice. Yeah.
Exactly. Then you've got Illuminor Saraz, big boy Illuminor, dropping by 10 to 165.
How do you feel about that change?
I hate it. Absolutely hate it. So Saraz is a beautiful model. I absolutely love him in terms of the way he's designed, the way he's put together, and the lore behind him is brilliant. But on the tabletop, being an opponent to Necrons, I absolutely hate Saraz.
So I'll be clear here. Out of all of our group, I'm the one who doesn't care about him the most. I've really never had issues against him at all.
I hate Saraz. Hate him.
It's 2+ armor save, 4+ Invon, 4+ feel no pain.
I still hate him. Yeah.
But Says going down is unpleasant, certainly for some people. It will make no waves competitively. I mean, there is 20-man block lists being run, which I believe he's still running. So they're the only winners really out of this for Necrons.
Sure.
But Necrons just happy again. They're doing okay at the moment. Just keep chugging along.
Yeah, exactly. We've got the Lockhurst Destroyers. The single man is the only one that's changed, going up 5 points to 40, which was needed.
It was needed, 100%.
Yeah, because obviously you're spamming just the individual mans for going around.
Realistically, this isn't going to change your list because you're going to have at least one Death Mark, because that pays for one of them. Then you've probably got one of these other units. So it's realistically going to change nothing in your lists.
Yeah. The Plasmancer went down by 5 points to 55.
Nice. Again, buffs the Immortal block.
Exactly. Scorpec Lord went up by 10 points to 90.
See, I hate him more than Says.
I know, I do hate it, only for one particular reason, though, and people may have heard on this channel before that a Scorpec Lord went into Trajan. I popped his 2 up, Invun saved, and rolled 3 1s.
But yeah, so the Scorpion Lord going up, he's very cheap for his durability, especially in Countertech Core where you can resurrect him.
Exactly. So it's Awakened, isn't it?
Oh, sorry, Awakened Dynasty.
Yes, Awakened, because again, I've had that so many times. Technomancer, down by 5 points to 80. So again, with the Wraiths, very good.
Yeah,
it's just, again, a nice drop.
Yeah.
And then you've got, for Awakened Dynasty itself, the Enigmatic Bond, that's gone up for the enhancement from 15 points to 30, so up by another 15.
I mean, it is a drastic change, but it's much closer to a 30-point enhancement. It is a 15.
Yeah.
Again, Awakened Dynasty, it just means your list isn't going to change massively.
No, exactly.
But I think as a whole, Necrons are positioned pretty well into the meta. They may struggle a little bit with how aggressive objectives are going to be traded, but being sort of a less melee-reliant, close-range shooting army, I feel like you're positioned pretty well in the meta. And Star Shatter genuinely doesn't get affected by any of these changes.
No, and that was the big point I was going to make. Star Shatter doesn't get changed, which is nice in some respects. I think it's a nice level now since it was released. But yeah, Awakened, a bit of a hit with the Scorpec Lords.
But the points change.
Elsewhere,
I think it's fine.
Yeah,
I think
Canoptek Core is the big winner here.
100%.
Yeah. So moving on. Orcs, what have we got?
What they got was a pile of excrement.
Oh, okay.
Orcs got annihilated. So we'll start with a positive change for Orcs, which is the buggies. So it's one of the only rules changes they got, which is the detachment ability. Now, it doesn't just give them assault, it also lets them charge.
Okay.
I don't even like this from a design standpoint because it makes War even less important for the buggy detachment because that's one of the benefits of War. But it is a buff, and all of the buggies went down in points.
Yeah.
Again, the issue with buggies is the data sheets suck.
Yeah, they do.
The list is going to be, there's probably going to be a speed for each list that's viable, spamming a load of buggies with the ability to, advance, shoot, charge when because they can fall back and charge now as well.
Gotcha, okay.
So they've just got so much flexibility. They're basically Emperor's Children, but just for buggies. There's probably a list there. I know people want buggies to be viable. What they don't want is to have to buy 30 of them.
Sure, I get that.
So, it's nice they got more viable. The way they've gone about it, I don't like. I hate every other change they've done for Orcs. The only other rules change is a clarification, which is that the bomb squig ability has been reworded because some people are trying to abuse it.
Yeah.
So it read twice per, so it used to be like twice per battle you could fire these bomb squigs. Now it reads once per battle for each bomb squig, because what people were doing is doing it twice, doing 2 explosions twice.
Oh, okay.
It clearly wasn't how that was intended to be played, and it wasn't even how it was written. If you ever let an opponent do that, if you're a TO that ever allowed that, I don't know where you get off. This is just how the rule was meant to work.
Sure.
There was no other rules changes. Everything else is points changes, and every other thing besides buggies is points nerfs. They got worse. There's
a couple of things, but let's say not great. So starting off, we've got the big mech with the shooter attack gun up by 10 points to 85.
Yes, the shooter attack gun. What are most of these points now says is tactical brigade. What it also feels like is this. It almost feels like these points were done before they removed Daka from the game.
Yeah.
Like, all of these affected that list. So basically, they nerfed Daka by just removing the detachment from the game, effectively. They made it so bad. And everyone was like, okay, that sucks, but I'm really happy they've not nerfed other detachments because of this. And now they've just come out and nerfed the other detachments.
Yeah. Yeah, really is. So the boys went up in points by 10 for the 20-man, so 170.
Someone could correct me. I've not seen Green Tide do anything anywhere recently. No. Like, since the Blood Surge nerfs, really, it's been pretty weak. It's just, I don't know anyone who is complaining about Green Tide. I mean, last 2 weeks, Orc win rate was 35%.
Yeah.
Why have they got nerfed?
One of those things. But as I say, when we've got the Boomdecker Snazwagon, that's gone down 10 points to 70. And then the Defcopters for the 3 has gone down by 10. And for the 6 has gone down by 20 to 80 and 160 respectively.
Yeah, I mean, they needed it. They're still not great units, but they're now at the point where they're so cheap with speed freak ability.
Yep.
That they're going to be just usable in that detachment. If you really desperately want to play a huge speed freak army, you are a big winner. Don't let me take that away from you. I just feel like you're not going to win in the respect that you wanted to. Your buggies are still going to feel pathetic on the table. You're just going to have 3 more of them.
Yeah, makes sense. And then you got Flash Kits. 10-man has gone up by 10 points to 170.
This one I don't hate. No, don't get me wrong. I don't like the fact they're nerfing Orcs when they're weak. This unit still baffled me that it remained how cheap it was.
Right.
It's for what they do, it's a really overpowered unit. The problem is that it was carrying a very weak faction.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And the custom Booster Blaster. Just get that right.
Yeah, it's a real struggle for you to read the Orc data sheet.
Just a bit, yeah, just a bit. We got a 5-point decrease, to 70 for that. We got the Looters, the 2 Spanners and 8 Looters has gone up 15 points to 150.
This nerf is I'll say it, the stupidest nerf they've ever done.
Right, okay.
This unit is unplayable. The only time it was playable was when it was broken in Daka Daka Daka.
Sure.
Purely because of Daka Daka Daka. Everyone joked, oh, they're not going to nerf Daka Daka, they're just going to nerf looters, which are unplayable anywhere else. And then they've just done it randomly.
Yeah.
It hits on 6s. Like, how can that unit ever need a nerf? It could be free near enough and it wouldn't be takeable. Like,
No, exactly. The Megatrak Scrapjet, down by 5.75. Yeah, again, one of those things.
it's one of my favourite models.
Yeah. Forgive my pronunciation on this. The Rakata Truck.
I'll help you. The Rocker Truck.
Yeah, Rocket Truck.
Buggy.
There you go, Squid Buggy, yeah.
Yeah. You can tell one of us has played Orcs, one of us hasn't.
I really have not played Orcs ever. Ironically, because I actually got my first Combat Patrol Orc Mini today, and I'm going to be painting it. So I'm like, cool. Okay.
What mini is it?
I can't remember. Literally. So it came through in the post, and then you dropped me the text saying Datastate was released. I was like, no, okay, and I went into panic
Well,
mode.
have a look at this recording.
We've then got the Shock Drunk Dragster, down by 5.7.
That is the coolest model in the game, and I won't stand any slander on the Shotgun Dragster.
Okay.
It's got a shock attack gun strapped to the front of it, and it's so unreliable that when it can like teleport accidentally.
Okay, God.
When it advances, it can teleport.
I love it.
So
the one thing
it's
about
a sniper.
Orcs,
It's also a sniper rifle, basically.
Oh, okay.
You'd like it's like got like it's got a grot firing it with a squig finder on it. So it's like a one-shot las cannon on a buggy. Yeah, that is the coolest model they have. So
Okay.
them being more viable is always a plus in my book, no matter how unhappy I am about the other orc changes.
Fair enough. Squidcock Boys, the 4-man went down by 10 to 150, and the 8-man went down by 20 to 300.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice change and it was needed for beast snaggers.
Yeah.
It might make them a bit more viable. I guess beast snaggers are probably the only other things that can be classified as winners. The issue is it's a pure melee list that relies on killing monsters and vehicles into a meta where a lot of anti-melee stuff isn't monsters and vehicles.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I just don't think they're very well placed at all.
Tank Buster and the Truck. So Tank Busters, the 6 model went up by 5 to 140,
Yeah.
and the Truck went up by 5 to 70.
Again, the Truck's another example of a model that probably needed to go up, but it needed like the rest of the army to get buffed in compensation.
Yeah.
Because it was one of the few things that made the army viable. Orcs, in my opinion, are dead. Unless you're willing to pivot to a completely different army and play Cult of Speed and really learn how to play a really weird army, it's completely dead in the water.
Yeah, fair
I
enough.
don't see how this army's playable.
Last one was the Zodgrog Wartsnagger. Have I got that right?
Zogrod Wartsnugger, yeah.
There we go. Up by 10 points to 90.
Super Grots, again, they probably needed a slight nerf, but they had 3 things carrying the army to a very mediocre win rate, and you've nerfed them all. Like, that and Eldar, they are the 2 biggest losers, and I really feel for anyone who plays those factions at the moment. You're in a really rough place unless you own 30 buggies or 40 bucks for Eldar.
No, exactly. Moving on. The Blueberries, Space Marines. So it's just standard Space Marines.
Well, it's pretty fitting you said Blueberries because it's only the Ultramarines that got changed,
Exactly.
really. Because it's just they're 2 big dogs that got nerfed rules-wise, buffed points-wise.
Yes, so with Marnius Calgar, we had a change there where it says that with Marnius Calgar, with the start of the command phase, if the unit's Marnius Calgar model is your Warlord and is on the battlefield, you gain the 1 CP.
Yeah, so did he not already have the on the battlefield condition?
He did, yes.
It's just the Warlord
It's the
bit.
Warlord bit as well.
Yeah, so the thing that's there to stop is the
Calgar.
running it with Guilliman. So you
Guilliman.
can have 5 effective CP every turn because Guilliman has to be your Warlord.
And speaking of Guilliman, though, with the Supreme Strategist ability, that has had a nerf. It's actually same with the Hive type, which we'll come to later. Once per battle round, not now once per turn, you are able to reduce the cost for stratagem.
I like this just for consistency.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, so anything basically across the board that gives the reduced stratagem cost that was once per turn is now gone to once per battle round.
Yeah, if the Grey Knight one doesn't get changed in the Codex, I'm going to riot. Theirs is still once per game.
Oh, God. I can imagine why you want to write on that one.
So to compensate for these, Calgar went down 10 points to 200.
Yep.
I still think he's basically not going to see any play now. The only time I've seen him played was with Guilliman, and he doesn't work with Guilliman anymore. So I don't know when you'd ever play him without him. Guilliman went down 25 points, and you're effectively taking off 210 points for bringing Calgar. So there's probably something still there with Guilliman.
Yeah.
The problem is that every other chapter got buffed quite heavily in Space Marines.
Yeah.
So we're going to need to see about that. They did try, though. Not of other Space Marine core units got buffed.
Yes, they did, yes.
What I like about these is these, again, are more for internal balance. They haven't buffed any units that were seeing meta play
In other
points-wise
factions, yeah.
in any faction, really. So aggressors Aggressors are probably the unit that I see the biggest disparity between new players and how good they are. People love aggressors, man.
Yeah.
You see every Space Marine player that I know has a 6-man aggressor block.
I mean, they are good.
Well, now they might be worth a lot more consideration because they went down 20 points for both a 3-man and a 6-man. Now 100 points for 3 or 220 for 6.
I mean, that's good.
I definitely dislike that a lot less.
Yeah.
They're just so slow.
They are slow, but when you pair them with Marnius, it makes them a little bit better.
True.
Yeah.
The captain with jump pack went down 10 points.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, again.
So with your jump pack assault intercessors.
Yeah, look at 75 points for him now, as opposed to 85. So
Yeah.
it's a nice change. One I like is the heavy intercessors went down 10 points, so 2 points a model.
So this is one big thing. You've mentioned it before as well. I love heavy intercessors just for the stat block that they have. There
The
must be something
buff
there.
stat block they got a little while ago,
Yeah.
where they went to heavy bolters on their guns effectively,
Yeah.
was really two shot, obviously, but really tasty. Then they obviously went up in points to compensate. They've now come back down to what they were before. As you say, with Cull the Horde being changed as well, because the only weakness I saw with them before was they're a little bit pricey and they give away Cull the Horde. Now they've gone back to their original points and don't give away Cull. Yeah. I really want to test them in the Dark Angels detachment.
I can see why. Yeah.
So I'll talk about that when we get to that in this video. But
That's fine.
That's one that I think.
But it's the fact it's the OC2 on it because they're battle line.
Yeah.
They're a great block to try and have to deal
It's
with.
just, you're paying 20, I know they're 20 points, but it's the cheapest 3-win model in the game, especially with toughness 6, 3-up save.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
Hellblasters went down 5 points. Again,
Nice.
another really popular unit going down.
Yeah.
Just stuff my Hellblasters. Plasmas aren't in a great place as addition.
No,
so
they're not.
it's a nice change. And the other one, which is much needed, is Vanguard Veterans went down 3 points a model.
They did.
So they're now 95 points for 5, 190 for 10. That's great. They really needed to be brought down. Compared to Jump Pack Intercessors, they're very much a side grade, and they were so many more points before. Now going much more in line with the Jump Pack Intercessors, puts them a lot more takeable. So overall, probably a net nerf to Ultramarines still.
I'd say
because you
so.
can't run that, but opened up a few more options potentially.
It did. Made things a little bit more viable.
Yeah, I think the ultimate winner out of the core Space Marine rules was the Dark Angels, though.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah,
Blood Angels won't care about these changes.
No, but that's fair enough. And moving on, we've got Space Wolves.
Surprising no one. No changes. The Codex we know is coming. We've seen it leaked. It's not out yet.
Yeah, exactly. So why would you make changes right now?
yeah.
Makes no sense. There has been a few bits to the Codex Space Wolves, but again, we won't touch on that right now.
There's no real point.
It really isn't.
If you play them currently, you'll know the changes. If you don't read them. Just wait until the Codex comes
Exactly.
out.
Yeah, exactly. Moving on, Tau. So, big changes with Tau. Okay, so the biggest change was the army rule. Now, there's been a lot of mixed opinions online already, but generally speaking, previously what you had with for the greater good was that you would use your units in pairs. So you'd have an observer and a guided unit, and then they would then buff into a spotted unit as an enemy unit, and that would then allow them to have +1 to the ballistic skill. As well as then either sustained or lethal.
You basically had a triangle, didn't you? You had your spotter picking a unit, and then you had the
guided.
Guide shooting that. So you had observer, picking a spotted, then guided shot it. I'm learning as well. I don't play Tau players.
No, and this is the thing. So the new change now, I'll read out to you word for word so we can kind of get an idea. It says, if your army faction is Tau Empire, at the start of your shooting phase, you can select a unit from your army with this ability to become an observer unit. For each observer unit that is eligible to shoot, excluding fortifications and battle shocked units. So again, battle shocked, that hasn't changed. You still can't observe if you're battle shocked. Select one enemy unit that is visible to be marked as their spotted unit until the end of the phase. So again, still only applies to shooting.
There's no change so far.
No change though. Well, this is where it does come into though. Units from your army, excluding the observer unit, are guided while targeting one or more spotted units.
Okay.
So you don't have the triangle effect anymore.
You don't pick a third.
Exactly.
Your whole army gets that benefit.
Exactly. So you've got one spotted unit, for example, like a Pathfinder group, which they can spot 2 different units as their innate data sheet ability.
Yeah.
They could then guide the rest of your army into 2 spotted units.
Okay.
So then you don't have to triangle it up and work out which one's going to then guide with what and all that sort of stuff. It literally just, cool, everybody's going to pounce on that one unit there or another unit there, and you can then...
Pathfinders did get changed.
Oh, okay.
They only can target one unit now.
There we go. Okay, so that's fair enough.
But I get your point.
Previously, in that respect, that's how it could work. So it makes sense, actually, for the Pathfinder change to then come into play. But in terms of that, it makes a big difference. But finishing off, though, Until the end of the phase, each time a model in your army for the greater good ability, excluding models that are observers, makes an attack to the spotted unit, improve the ballistic skill characteristics of that attack by 1, so still the same. And if the spotted unit has the marker light, if the observer unit has the marker light keyword, it gives the ignores cover ability.
So basically, you get a lot more spread from your marker light effect in
Yeah.
this, basically. So you get more. Your spotters do a lot more.
They do a lot
So
more.
like your stealth suits apply it to everything that shoots you, don't they now?
So, interestingly about stealth suits, they went up in points.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, they've gone up from. There's only the 3-mans went up. They've gone up 20 points for 3.
And who was running the 6-man? Nobody.
No, you're
really.
always running 3-3-mans. So
yeah.
you're paying 60 extra points for that, basically.
And this is the thing, because you've obviously then got the way it used to work is that you used to use the spotters there, and then they used to guide one other unit, which would give them on the datasheet ability reroll hits of 1 and reroll wounds of 1. If that unit is now spotting for your entire army, you can then get on your entire army reroll hits of 1 and reroll wounds of 1 into that one particular unit, which is just crazy.
Oh
in my
yeah, that's a
opinion.
huge buff. I mean, it's
Huge amount of damage
it's
increase.
Kind of like a pseudo oath at that point.
It is.
Like,
yeah.
no, that's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
The only restriction I did see people complain about online, because the only thing I've seen about this rule is kind of what Reddit has said, which is
Sure.
a great source for information, as everyone knows.
Oh, of course.
Is that you have to declare everything at the start of your shooting phase.
Right, okay.
So you have to make sure that you're weighing up how many units you want to try and commit into, because if you don't get the benefits still for a unit that's spotted. So if you use a unit as an observer,
Yeah.
they can't benefit from a different unit spotting.
Yeah.
Except for Pathfinders benefit from their own now.
Sure.
But other than that, so you need to be careful not to spot with too many different units potentially and spread yourself too thin on your focus.
Makes sense. However, one thing that has changed is that when you used to be able to split fire, it used to nerf you on that side of things.
Yeah.
So you used to have a decrease to your ballistic skill and things like that. Not anymore.
Well, now it's almost like a double buff because
Exactly.
you don't only get the disadvantage, you can shoot into 2 separate units that have been guided and get
Yeah.
the buff into both of them.
Yeah.
Do you think the Storm Surge is back?
I know, right? It's just ridiculous. It was needed because Tau seemed very kind of wet.
Tau are very weak at the moment.
Yeah.
They're in a very poor place. And I think the biggest thing more than that is the community consensus around Tau. It's becoming quite toxic recently.
Yeah.
People were very unhappy in Tau community. Whether you agree with it or not, it was there. People were very unhappy with the split fire situation, and people were very unhappy with how complex their army rule was
Sure.
to understand. I mean, don't get me wrong, once you play it, it's not a complex rule. But
No.
as we've just sat here trying to explain it with words is actually a relative. It's
Yeah, you need a
complicated.
physical
I
interaction.
think the only one's harder to explain with words is the Emperor's Children one.
Yeah.
But that's even simpler to show on the table. So it's not an issue at all.
No, it makes sense.
I like the change.
Another change, though, is the Kal Yun detachment.
Okay.
So, Way of the Patient Hunter. Still remains the same to the beginning. So, from the third battle round onwards, ranged weapons by Tau Empire models from your army have the sustained hits 1 ability.
Okay.
It then says, which is the change, in addition, whilst a unit is guided, in addition, while a unit is a guided unit, each time a ranged attack is made by a model in that unit that targets a spotted unit, you can ignore any and all modifiers to the attack ballistic skill characteristics and any and all modifiers to the hit roll.
Okay, so as opposed to sustained hits 2,
Yeah.
you just get that.
Ignore modifiers, yeah.
That is definitely weaker.
It is, but when then you combine it with
100%.
the actual army rule,
Yeah, I mean, imagine having 3 turns if you just pick 3 units and your whole army's getting sustained hits 2
Sustained 2.
against
Yeah, exactly.
it.
That'd
With
just be
3
nuts.
roll hit rolls and wound rolls and
Yeah,
1 potentially.
it would be nuts.
Yeah, that would be quite ridiculous.
I played a little bit of Tau towards the beginning of my time in 40k. Didn't get on with it, didn't gel with the army just because of the simple fact I wasn't liking being locked to the shooting phase and the movement phase. But this makes a lot more sense with the changes to the army rule than looking at Kal Yun itself. I can see why people might be a little bit annoyed with the change in the technical
As
buff
someone
there.
who played
The debuff, sorry.
Daka pre-nerf,
Yeah.
I played it with a Stomper, so not the pure sweat thing. Sustained hits 2 is so fun.
Yeah.
That I can see why people are annoyed it's gone. It is very
Yeah.
fun picking up that many dice.
I can imagine.
It is also a ludicrously unbalanced rule.
Yeah.
So I honestly think they should avoid it. I think KM was the most balanced application we've ever had on it. You know,
Yeah.
not triggering until turn 3. I think with the pure shooty army like Tau, especially with the catch-up mechanic of challenger cards,
Oh, God.
I think Kaon could have been really irritating.
yeah,
so I'm quite
exactly.
glad they've hit that preemptively.
Yeah. So through Unity, Devastation Enhancement just says changes to, and essentially it's just the word a guided unit now. A guided unit.
Yeah.
So it just to fit in line with
They've
the army
had to
rule.
rework it, so it's
Exactly.
not targeting your unit, it's targeting the enemy. Sort of
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah, so not really no real big issue there, but just changes slightly to the scenario. There's a few datasheet changes. We got the Firesight team precise targeting ability. So it says each time a model in this unit makes an attack that targets a spotted unit, you can reroll the hit roll. So you can reroll hits into a spotted unit.
I actually don't know what it did originally. Do you know what
to be fair,
changed
neither did I. Cool. Let us know in the comments if you know what it did originally. Great.
It may have just been that it did that already. It's just worded to make it work now.
Possibly, yeah, in that respect. The Pathfinder team, as you mentioned, it now only goes into the spotted unit. They can only do one. But it also then says improve the ballistic skill of that attack by 1. And the attacks then ignore cover.
Basically, it gives them the effect of their own guiding.
Exactly.
It's really cool with the new kill team. The biggest winners out of this whole data slate are anyone who likes kill team boxes. Yeah. They're so good at the moment, the kill teams.
But yeah, apart from that, from Tau, that's pretty much it. Is there any points changes?
Yeah, there has been a couple. So we already touched on the stealth battle suits. Both the enhancements we mentioned, both the Khan and the Montcar one, have both been increased as well to represent the fact they can buff more than one unit. So through Unity, Devastation has gone to 40 points from 25.
Gotcha.
And Coordinated Exploitation has gone from 20 to 40.
Gotcha.
The only other change was Crew Carnivores went up 10 points for a 20-man.
Yep.
Just making them half a point more expensive for the full 20, nothing to the 10. Just again, because buff application is quite easy. Whether it was needed or not, I don't know. Crew are in quite a good place. They seem to be very scared of these mass 20-man armies. So I was surprised when I read it. Not surprised afterwards, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's in line with what they've been doing a lot of. So
no, it's fair enough. So next one, Thousand Suns. Anything there?
So the only thing we've got for Thousand Suns is an FAQ clarification, which is very, very needed. I'm going to go over it. I want to get the exact wording up, so I'm not lying. So it's to do with their army rule.
Okay.
Their army rule was written as a flowchart for some reason, as opposed to with words, which has made there been a bit of community discourse on how it's done. The problem is that the interpretation from the flowchart was the most beneficial to Thousand Suns players. So people just kind of innately were like, well, that can't be how it works. You've chosen the good route. Thousand Suns players were right. We can read. It's our law. We're good at reading. So the clarification is, when using the Cabal of Sorcerer's army rule, do I have to choose whether to channel the warp before rolling any dice? So that's when you roll the third d6 for the army rule.
Yep.
No.
Okay.
It's pretty clear if you read the army rule. That bit I don't know how there was any confusion about. It pretty clearly states optional plus, and it's after the 2d6 roll. So that's fine. If you want to roll the third d6, you can. It's the other bit that I'm glad got clarified, which is when using the army roll, if I roll one or more doubles or triples, does my model only suffer the d3 mortal wounds if I chose to channel the warp? The answer is yes.
Okay.
That's because it's in the optional section again. The confusion there was in the app because it's a smaller font. It was actually underneath the optional section, so it looked separate, was where the confusion was coming in. Right. So don't get me wrong, it does mean that if you roll like 2 6s with your original one, that can feel a bit stupid because you're going to get the bigger effect and you can go, no, I'm not going to add the third d6 so I don't perils either. That can feel a bit daft. Overall, if either of those weren't the case, it'd be such a high-risk army rule for not that huge a reward.
Yeah, makes sense.
Overall, I think Thousand Suns, we'd never expect any change. They're the newest codex. They're in a very good spot. I would not be surprised if Thousand Suns pick up a lot of wins.
Yeah.
It's going to take quite a bit of adjustment. They're very different to what they were in Index.
Sure.
However, their Index is potentially the most consistent Index/codex we've ever had across an edition.
Okay.
There's never been a point in this edition where it's not been at least competitive.
Yeah.
It's not always been winning every event, but it's always been up there, and it won an event literally the week before Codex came out. So we never had a point where it was particularly weak. That's going to continue that trend. I think they're in a pretty good place against Death Guard, depending on the Death Guard list. So we'll just have to wait and see how they impact the meta.
Yeah.
It would not surprise me if the next data slate, the 2 headlines were Death Guard, 1,000 Suns nerf. So
yeah, makes sense. So moving on, Tyranids. No major changes here, apart from 2 aspects. So I mentioned one earlier on, which was the Hive Tyrant and the Winged Hive Tyrant. Their ability of kind of generating a reduced stratagem cost has now gone for once per battle round, not once per turn. So again, coming in line with what we said earlier on, and in my opinion, even though I played a lot of Tyranids and I enjoyed that and I made use of that ability a lot, I still think it's a welcome change.
yeah, often it just kind of led to like, I might as well just command point reroll this roll, or I might as well do this, and it just felt a bit. You didn't feel great to play against.
That's fair enough. However, one thing that has changed is the Psychophage.
Might as well be a different model at this point.
It really is. And this is a big one for me because when I started playing Warhammer in 10th edition, I got 2 models of the Psychophage because I bought the starter set and then I bought the Leviathan box as 2 separate things. So I had 2 Psychophage modules. And then when I got to learning how the game was played, I realized, oh, these are rubbish.
Yeah, because that was pre-assimilation swarm being buffed, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I never picked them up again. They've just sat on my shelf, just gathering dust. And so he's now got pride of place on the table for his little buff. So his big changes were the move characteristic has changed to 12
From 8.
From 8, and that's the big thing. Is that looking at his original data sheet, we had an 8 move, and that's what restricted him a lot
Because it's a big old base.
Yeah, big old base. But moving to 12 is a big change. So a lot more movement ability around the board, and a lot more presence on the board,
Especially
as well.
given how close range it is.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of close range, the other aspects that I want to really pick up on was the melee stat line. So previously it was a D6 plus 1, so very swingy on the amount of attacks that you had. Now it's just gone to flat 6. I know. So much better. Much better. Still hitting on 3s. Still strength 6, but AP 2 now.
Was it AP 1 before?
It was AP 1. Yeah. So big difference.
Yeah,
so
big
again,
buff.
makes it much more harder hitting in melee.
Has it maintained its like anti?
Yes, still maintained all of its anti and still all that side of things. So the dev wounds are still there and everything else. But it has also had smoke added as a keyword. Well, it's not going to be major difference, but it's still something.
Yeah, it might come up.
Exactly.
It would have come up a lot more before the Hive Tyrant nerfs.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But still one of those things. The other aspect was the ability that it has, so the biostimulus. So previously, what that was essentially just an aura of a 6-up feel no pain that it gave to models within 6 inches of it. That has been drastically rewritten. It now says, in your shooting phase, after this model has shot, select one enemy unit hit by or one or more of those attacks. Until the end of the turn, each time a friendly Tyrannid unit makes a melee attack that targets the enemy unit, improve the armor pen of that attack by 1. The same enemy unit can only be affected by this ability once per turn. So, huge buff to things like warriors going into it that are around it. So when they shoot it at an enemy, it does this, and then it applies to the end of the turn.
And it works in its own melee as well, doesn't it?
It does.
So it's basically got a 2 AP buff.
Yeah, and this is the thing, is that it makes a massive difference.
Because is its ranged weapon a torrent weapon?
It is.
So you're guaranteed to hit.
It's guaranteed to hit, so that's not going to make too much of an impact there. So in that respect, as long as you're close enough for it to affect it, you're then doing this. Yeah. And it's you're not going to have an issue with it.
No, that's right.
So it really makes them a lot more viable in a lot of lists, especially Assimilation Swarm.
The Simulation Swarm, and I would say they might see a bit of play in the new detachment as well.
Yes, which we'll cover next time on the next video. But as you're saying, it does bring them into a lot more
Anything
contention.
that wants to go aggressive with melee in the Tyrannid army, this model is going to
at
be
least
in the
one,
list.
if not 2.
Tyrannid's biggest weakness is probably their lack of AP.
Yeah.
So being able to buff that up across
Huge difference.
Your target of choice with a 12-inch move to get into position for it effectively gives it a 24-inch ability to apply this.
Yeah.
It's incredibly potent.
So we have another change as well, though. We have the Raveners. So again, don't know whether this was meant to be released right now, because obviously it's the new kill team scenario, and whether it was meant to be released with the update.
I think they've probably just done it just to put it in line with the data slate, especially with the new detachment coming out. These are clearly built for the new detachment.
Of course. And so big changes here, though, in terms of the scenario. So you used to be able to have on the Raveners 2 different profiles for the loadouts. You used to have the ranged and then the melee. So the ranged gave you obviously ranged abilities, but you only had a 5-up save. The melee was the 4-up save, which is still the play, but you can only have that option now. However, their melee profile has had a big change.
Okay.
So they used to have 7 attacks, and it used to be AP1 damage 1. Now, though, it's only 3 attacks. AP2 damage 2. So a lot less attacks, but a lot more powerful when they go
still
through.
twin linked?
They are still twin linked.
Nice.
Yes. So you still got a lot of re-rolls on those wound rolls. So as long as you get the hits off, and they're hitting on 3s, so fairly standard.
Yeah.
And if you're hitting on 3s, great, carry on. But you then got the re-rolls on the twin linked for the strength 5, so not great strength, but into infantry, they're going to slice through things.
Yeah, I mean, it's made them worse into sort of your complete chaff, but into
Yeah.
anything that's like above a guardsman, they've got stronger.
Oh, exactly.
AP and
Yeah.
damage.
So Space Marines, they're perfect Space Marine killers in this respect.
The big nerf to them, sort of to be said, is the unit size, though, isn't it?
That is, yes, correct. So you used to be able to, obviously, they had a lot of secondary play because there were a lot of, with their rule, uppy downy. So for those that don't know, uppy downies, you were able to take them off into strategic reserve at the end of your opponent's turn and then place them down. And they had the deep strike ability. They still do. But the issue you've now got is that the models themselves have moved to a 5-man squad. So for anybody that had bought Raveners, they were in 3s. And so that's a big difference. So a lot of people that have got older Tyranid models that are Raveners are going to be annoyed, me.
I think I've got 6, and so like already I can't use them the same way as I used to. It's completely changed in that respect.
And that's the issue, is that you've got, so I had 6, I had the 2 3-mans, and I can only now fill 1 squad.
Yeah.
Which is a big difference, because I used to use 2 squads for a lot of secondary play. And
what I'd probably recommend to people who are in this situation is I would probably convert your spare Ravener in some manner to be the Ravener Prime.
Yeah.
And then you've got the option of running them as either the Ravener Prime unit or the normal Ravener unit.
And then the next one, obviously, is the new Kill Team Raveners. So you have the hyper-adaptive Raveners. We then have the Ravener Prime and then the Raveners themselves. And again, it's a 5-man squad. So there's a lot to be said about this one, because there's different profiles for the different Raveners.
I love this unit.
I love it as well. They look really cool.
I love this unit.
The look of them looks great.
Oh, I'm talking mechanically.
Mechanically, they look great as well. But do you want to talk about the mechanics?
So I'm going to shoot the mechanics. Okay. I'm super excited about these, not as a Tyranid player.
Okay, carry on.
They've got the Vanguard Invader keyword, which means that I can run them in Final Day in Gene Cult.
That's why you're excited.
I'm excited because I've got another Final Day unit. They're going to be so... Oh, they do a lot that you want in Final Day with their new weapon profiles.
Tell me about it.
So predominantly you're paying what feels like a 40-point upgrade to this unit to put the Ravener Prime into it. So what you get on the normal Raveners is they get the exact same weapon, except it's got anti-5+ for monsters and vehicles. Oh. So it means against really tough vehicles, sort of like your toughness 11 pluses, they're wounding on 5s, toughness 10+, sorry, they're wounding on 5s, not 6s. Yep. With twin links, that is a huge damage increase.
Huge.
They don't want to take off tanks, but it means a squad of 5 of them, they're certainly going to do damage into them now, which anyone who plays Gene Cult knows, especially with the melee versions of the list, they can struggle a little bit with that. Yeah. So this is a really cool unit for that. They also all have sustained hits in this specific unit, the hyper adapted, and they get free either heroic intervention. And normally you say Overwatch to go with this. No, they get rapid ingress. The other thing that's really interesting is they can do both of those in addition to another unit. So you can rapid ingress 2 units with this unit.
Nice.
Yeah. So that is super tasty.
Especially for gene stealers.
Now, the biggest loss for this unit, and the biggest reason that, to be honest with you, most people aren't going to take this unit in their army, is they don't have Uppy Downy.
Yeah, and that's a big thing.
They're a much more blunt tool, but that's because the Prime does a lot. So there's so many big things. I can't say the one big thing. So for Tyranid players, he's the Synapse model.
Yep.
So he's got Shadows in the Warp. He applies Synapse. So he can spread that out, especially in an army that's going forwards. Yeah. Again, we'll talk about this in the new detachment we're going over. I think that's the one we're both most excited about. Yep. Super cool detachment. But it's very deep strikey, Trigon based.
Yeah, very
These are
tricksy.
going to fit straight in. He himself has the exact same weapon as the others, except with double the attacks.
Nice.
So it's like having a squad of 6 of them.
Yep.
It means that... And Synapse gives you an extra strength in combat, doesn't it? So he gives their own squad strength 6 in combat the whole time, which is really nice. Got a Psychophage, they go to AP3.
Yep.
Looking at these at strength 6, AP3, that's suddenly a really deadly unit with sustained hits.
That is.
I personally would take these over Warriors a lot of the time.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think the only downside, and this would make the unit go over the edge, is if a winged Prime could join these.
Oh, that would be that would be tasty.
Just with the enhancements in Vanguard Invader.
Yeah.
But these aren't going to see a huge amount of play in, I don't think so anyway, in like Invasion Fleet.
Sure.
They might. I think Final Day is going to experiment with these a lot, but the 2 Tyranid detachments are going to be the new one, which I don't know the name of, and then the Vanguard Invader detachment. Yep. They're going to love these. He also does have a gun. Talking about random Overwatch threats tacked onto units, he's got a D6 plus 3 torrent weapon, strength 6, AP1 with assault ignores cover torrent. Oh. It's, I mean, that helps kind of bridge the gap between how the old unit could deal with infantry or not. I love the hyper-adapted Raveners. I think if you play Tyranids, try and find an AdMech player and pick up the kill team, or wait until the box is out and buy just the individual one.
I would, yeah. So with the Subterranean Assault, which is the new detachment, I'm going to very much enjoy playing these.
I'm very much going to be like asking you to 3D print me some worms, I think.
Yeah, potentially, definitely. So with the Raveners, is there any points changes that you've got?
So Raveners obviously have changed in points for what they currently are.
Yep.
I would ignore what they say on the current data slate because... it doesn't matter. They're 125 for 5 for the normal unit, which is pretty much in line with what they were before. Just you have to take them as 5 now.
And that's the issue.
And then it's 165 for the hyper adapted, which feels really tasty, I've got to be honest.
Okay.
The other changes, the Psychophage has gone up. It's gone up 15 points.
It does.
It would have been ludicrous at 95.
It would have been.
It would have been obscene at 95.
Yeah.
So at 110, it feels very right for what it is.
Yeah.
Maybe playing it a little bit safe. I could maybe see it coming down 5 if it doesn't, or 10 if it doesn't make the waves, we think. But I think at 110, we're going to see a lot of play.
I think so, yeah.
Hive Guard Guard have gone down again, not Hive Guide. Half Guard have gone down, 10 points per 3.
Nice, okay.
So 90 points for 3 now. You've got to be able to take a min squad of 3, surely, to do something with them. They're so tough. I mean, I always wanted to experiment with 6 in a Tyrannus site, but it's so many points.
Yeah.
Now, 20 points less, maybe a bit more viable.
Yep.
Now, the Hive Tyrant, if you were someone who kept forgetting to use the rule in your opponent in the other turn, this is a huge buff for you because he's gone down 30 points.
It's a big drop.
Yeah, and the Winged was also gone down 30. So we're looking at 170 for a Winged Hive Tyrant.
Yeah.
His ability's got a lot worse, but that is, again, very nice for Final Day, very nice for everything like that. Although it really does hurt Final Day losing the extra CP cheese. It was very big. The Screamer Killer's gone down 10. 135.
Yeah, warranted in my opinion.
Is it finally getting to be cheap enough to be playable, do you think, at 135?
I'd say so. I'd like the model, and I think what it can do in melee.
3 of them for 405 points. That's spam worthy at that point, so that's pretty good. And then the Swarm one's gone down 20 for the same reason as the other.
It makes a lot more sense.
So 220 for him as well.
Yeah.
And then no detachment changes, I believe. No, but changes there at all. So.
No, fair enough. Moving on to World Eaters. Have we got anything there?
No.
Nice and simple. Nothing on
World Eaters probably... I'm sure I know World Eaters players are very mixed at the moment. They're so recent they couldn't have expected massive changes, if any. I get it. If you want to just play an army that's nice and simple and run at your opponent's head, you have lost that access. You are just much weaker at that. My big complaint is I don't like how balanced around Berserker Warband the army is.
Sure.
So they've all gone down to strength to compensate for the fact that Berserker Warband gives you 2 extra now. But that means in the other detachments they're a bit weaker.
Yep.
I do think in the competitive scene, we are going to start seeing more tops with them as people get more consistent with the Khorne Demon detachment with Inside World Eaters. I can't remember the name of it for the life of me. But the stratagems in that are vile. Again, the width for World Eaters.
Yeah.
Melee isn't great in Death Guard.
Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest thing. Bloodletters already are a poor unit. They suck into toughness 6 models because they're strength 5, and it's like they really don't match up well at all. No, so World Eaters, no one expected any changes. I think they're pretty balanced at the moment, but I can see why they'd be unhappy.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, that pretty much finishes it for the Dataslate changes and the Minotaur and Field Manual for June 2025. But if you've got any comments and anything's been affected that you potentially run, let us know in the comments below. And if there's anything you want to talk about in the comments as well, let us know your opinions, and anything you think that they've got wrong or got right, let us know.
Yeah. That's exactly what I would say. I'm sure we've missed things that people have thought about intricacies of their personal armies. I'm sure someone can say the service unit in Azmech is going to break the game.
Yeah.
Vice versa is something we don't know. Please let us know if we've missed anything.
Exactly. As I said, we're not experts in this area. We're just giving our opinions.
Especially not for every army.
No, exactly. So we have our specialities and we have our niches, but let us know in the comments if there's anything that you differ in your opinions, because it's a community we want to build this sort of conversation as it goes round. Yeah. But generally speaking, thank you very much for your time. Again, Dan, thank you for yours.
Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. And we'll see you in the next video.
See ya.
Take care.